Hey, good evening. I would like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Welcome to the December 8th, 2025 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this Planning Commission meeting is being held in person using the Zoom webinar format. Please note that we are not accepting remote public comment during commission meetings. Agenda item number 2, roll call. The record should note that 4 members of the commission are present this evening. Commissioner Shores and Commissioner Lowenthal are absent. Agenda item number 3, request for AB 2249 remote participation. There are no commissioners participating remotely under AB 2249. Agenda item number 4, review of the agenda. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we do have one item 7A 1406 Drake Avenue has been continued due to a lack of a quorum this evening. So this item will be continued to the January 12th Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any recusals? Seeing none, agenda item number 5, public comments non-agenda. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item. Agenda item number 6, consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless separate discussion and/or action is requested by the applicant, a member of the public, or a commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. This evening, we have 3 items on the consent calendar. Item 6A, approval of the November 10th, 2025 Planning Commission minutes. Item 6B, adoption of the 2026 Planning Commission calendar. Item 6C, 1385 Hillside Circle, Lot 3. Would any member of the public or the Planning Commission like to pull this item for discussion? Yes, Commissioner Pfaff.
Yes, I would like to just have a couple of comments, and
On which one?
it's the third one.
1385 Hillside. Great. Any other? Okay.
I have a quick question on the calendar.
Yes.
What is the proposed joint city council planning?
We'll pull it.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We can do that. So we'll pull the 2026 Planning Commission calendar as well. Why don't we start with that since it comes first? Item B.
Why don't we take a motion and a second and a vote on item 6A then?
Okay.
No one wishes to pull that one.
Great. Can I have a motion on the Planning Commission minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes.
A second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Schmid, a second by Commissioner Pfaff. Any discussion on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Pfaff?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid?
Aye.
Commissioner Say?
Aye.
Chair Hurin?
Aye. The motion passes 4-0-0-2. Item 6B, adoption of the 2026 Planning Commission calendar. Commissioner Say?
Just a quick clarification that the proposed meeting date for the joint city council planning commission meeting, does that still fall within the year? What is the end of the year for our terms? Is it?
Oh,
year's terms is in March or April?
That's end of April, beginning of May. So that'll
Okay,
still
so
fall
within the year.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was it. I just want to clarify.
Can we have a motion on item 6B?
We also need to ask for any public comments.
Yes, sorry. Would any member of the public like to speak on the agenda topic? The 2026 Planning Commission calendar topic? Seeing none, may I have a motion?
Oh, I'll move that we approve item 6B.
Have a second?
Second.
Great. I have a motion by Commissioner Say and a second by Commissioner Schmid. Any discussion on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Pfaff,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Haran.
Aye, the motion passes 4002. Item 6C, 1385 Hillside Circle, Lot 3.
Yes, thank you very much. It's just a quick comment. I still could not appreciate is the developer not here, right? Okay. Very much appreciate the change to the, which tree was that? The larger, not the strawberry tree, but the,
Madrone.
sorry?
Madrone.
Yes, Pacific Madrone, thank you. Yeah, exactly. But the last time I mentioned, there's still an indication of the ginkgo tree on the plans. And either could they put it in or just take it off the planting list? So I think the planting list, just for future proofing this whole file, it would be great if they could put the Pacific Madrone in there, remove the strawberry tree, which are still on there on the planting palette, and also remove the ginkgo. It's just, if something happens to those, nobody's going to know it was planted because there's no record. And that was it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions by the Planning Commission? Would any member of the public like to speak on item 6C, 1385 Hillside Circle? Seeing none, may I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Would you like to try to
Oh,
summarize your?
oh, yes, thank you. With with a cleaned up plant palette, thank you very much for that page. I was looking for it. It's actually a plan palette for the for all three parcels, but, or projects, but it would be on L5, I believe. And also the one with the pictures in it. I can't get to it here. The one with the color pictures on it that shows the palette, that one is not correct. So to remove the ginkgo, to replace the strawberry tree with the Pacific Madrone. I think it's Arbutus Marina or something is their real name, with Pacific Madrone. And that would be all.
Okay, and I think the clarification is this is for just Lot 3, because we've already approved Lot 1.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, but the planting palette, I think, goes with all of them. But anyway, yes, I think they understand. Okay, thank you.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Pfaff and a second by Commissioner Schmid. Any discussion on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Pfaff,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Haran.
Aye, the motion passes 4002. Agenda item number 7, action item. This has been continued to a date certain. So we'll move to agenda item number 8. Study session, item 8A, 1430 Chapin Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Being none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. I'll be providing you with a brief introduction for the project at 1430 Chapin, after which the applicant is present and will give you a more detailed presentation. You last reviewed the project as a study item on your March 21st calendar of this year, where you provided the applicant with design feedback and requests for additional information. The revised proposal before you tonight maintains the requested amendments to the downtown specific plan and the zoning code to increase the overall allowable height in the CAC zoning district. The existing height limit was 35 feet or 55 feet with a special permit, and the requested height amendment is for 60 feet or 75 feet with a special permit. In addition to the proposed amendments, the project requires major design review, a special permit for a requested building height of 74 feet, 6 inches, a lot merger and tentative condominium map for 5 commercial condominiums in the building. The revised project also includes 2 public plazas in front of 1430 and 1440 Chapin Avenue, and those were offered by the applicant in response to the commission's request that the applicant include more ground level interaction and consider providing a public amenity. Environmental review for the project is in process, and it's anticipated that the applicant will take away the commission's comments this evening and return at a future action hearing where the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to City Council on the various applications and the environmental document. That concludes the staff introduction, and I can take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, it's just, I think it would be great. I think I know what happened, but it would be great for the benefit of my colleagues. When we left, we had asked to look at the general plan, I guess goals about having, it was variable, how was it called?
Massing?
Thank you. Variable massing as a goal. I mean, like just on this piece, not rezoning the whole area. I think that's what we had left you with.
So,
Yeah.
Let me jump in and
okay.
respond to that if I may. Thank you, Commissioner Pfaff. The policy in the general plan was to look at an opportunity or in the future to review all height standards in the city to see if variable heights would be a new way that the city would like to measure height. Right now, the zoning code has a very specific way in which height is calculated that's used across the city. So to be able to use a variable height, we would need to go through that analysis and change our zoning regulations in which height is calculated. We would not be able to just apply that on a project basis. We have to review this project based on what the zoning code says in how to measure and determine height. So though that is a great comment, and the applicant will go into its design of how they've tried to make the massing more variable, we couldn't require them to do that or try to come up with a variable massing formula to be able to apply to this project at this time.
Okay, thank you.
The 75-foot height, does that include the rooftop HVAC units and screening?
It does not. So height is measured from average top of curve to the top of the parapet or highest ridge. Screening, and in particular, the elevator enclosures or stair enclosures, would be allowed to go another 14 of that.
Okay.
Just a clarification on the number of times we're allowed to review this, because it came for a study and this is another study. So it has to then be on action, right? The next time? Is that?
The limit to the amount of hearings a project can go to is just for residential projects,
Okay.
not for commercial. However, we've as staff tried to set it up so we provide you information, and if commission is good with the design, that we can kind of wrap all the information up for an action here.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having me back again tonight. My name is Neil Young, the principal of Develop Urban, the developer for the project. I thought if you can go to the next slide, please. We'd start with maybe doing a quick design recap since it's been a while since we've been here, and then we'll go into some of the specific comments that you had and how we might address them. So if we can go to the next slide, please. One design concept that carries throughout the project is the idea of blurred lines and blurred boundaries. that's blurred between the natural and the built environment, the inside versus the outside, work from home versus work from office, and publicly accessible space versus private space. And you'll see this philosophy throughout the project. If you can go to the next slide, please. If you remember, the project choice of design materials is mass timber. This is a material choice that we're super excited about. Very sustainable, sequesters carbon when it's harvested, and has a low carbon footprint when you're engineering and manufactured the timber. The image you can see here is a mix of mass timber beams and columns that are engineered and manufactured off-site, brought to site, and then put together in a very low impact manner during construction. Next slide, please. In addition to it being sustainable, it is inherently beautiful. If you take a look at this image, you'll see how the warmth and how the timber wraps you around, and you have a very natural, warm, inviting. If you go to the next slide, please. In addition, this idea of carrying the natural elements forward is the idea of carrying greenery throughout the project. That starts at the base of the project in our front porch concept, carries up vertically, and wraps the top of the building with a roof garden. Next slide, please. If you can see here in the rendering, you can kind of see how transparent the building is, how much the mass timber can communicate through, and how you can see greenery everywhere. Next slide. From this view, you can see how we tried to play with the massing of the site, how we made it transparent, how you can see the front porch concept and how green that is, and how that can attract pedestrians and visitors to the site, and how that carries up through the project, and how the massing interacts, which I'll get into in more detail later on in the project. Next slide. And then when you're inside the building, this is similar to the image we saw before. You're wrapped in these mass timber elements. It's very warm, very inviting. That idea of the blurred concept between the outside room and the inside, and not really knowing whether you're inside or outside, just gives you a very an experience that makes you want to come to work. And regardless of where you are in the project or outside the project, we want you to see green. Next slide, please. The project is a mixed-use development, with office being the biggest component of the project on the upper floors. On the ground floor, you have the publicly accessible place in the front porch, the carried vertical landscaping of the greenery, and then you have ground floor retail. We envision that ground floor retail to be a combination of a food and beverage concept that's publicly facing, and then JP Morgan Chase Bank as the retail branch. Also there, highlighted in yellow, is the entrance to the parking structure. That currently is proposed as subterranean parking. We're looking at different parking solutions, but anything we did there wouldn't dramatically affect the exterior design. Next slide, please. So in addition to these concepts of the design philosophy, one thing that's critically important is the idea of how we're programming the site. So we're coming up with something we call the House of Chapin. Now, the House of Chapin is part social hub, part elevated workspace. If you can go to the next slide. Designed to give smaller tenants access to amenities that are hospitality inspired and typically reserved for a much larger corporate footprint. Today's office tenant needs less real estate, but it doesn't mean they need lesser real estate. In my opinion, it's quite the opposite. We need to create high quality real estate with plenty of amenities to attract employers and employees to the downtown. So that's what we're doing here with the House at Chapin and programming a strong amenity base for the building. Next slide. We'll have a space for these tenants to have an environment to socialize, to enjoy recreation, to have focused work. Or let's say you're a smaller tenant, you have maybe a 10,000 square foot floor plate, you decide to bring your employees all in for an all hands meeting. You flex into this space, use the dedicated meeting space, and have your all hands meetings. We also see this as an ability for other companies to use the space and book to have offsite meetings. I view this as an important part to creating a very differentiated space in addition to the design philosophy. Next slide, please. JP Morgan Chase is a key component of the project, currently operating a retail branch on the site. The intent is when they are finished, they will come back and operate a branch. Next slide, please. JP Morgan's chosen a few cities around the nation to implement what they call the JPM Chase Financial Center. This is a branch concept that's much more relationship focused on developing rapport with clients and be much more experiential, which aligns well with the design philosophy for the project. You can see some images here. So that's a little bit about the design. I'm happy to talk about anything in more detail. Maybe we'll talk next about some of the comments you had and our responses to them. Next slide. So one of the comments was massing and scale. How do we look at that and how do we treat that? Typically, if you were going to look at a site and you wanted to maximize the use, you'd go to the max setbacks, go straight up and create essentially this box and call it an office building, blaze it. And that is a very typical approach for office development. It's not the approach that I try to take, and neither does my design. Our intent is that the buildings we create are a part of the community for decades, and we treat our decisions in that manner. So instead, next slide, what we do is we push and we pull. If you go to the next slide. We kind of look to see where we can adjust the massing. Next slide. We cut in, and next slide. And then we identify areas so that at the end result is a mass that's architecturally interesting, that's varied, that doesn't put the height of the building straight up front of you on the street. Next slide. And so Commissioner Pfaff, you asked about sort of variable heights. We've done that in the design approach, and you could see the intent of that is so that you never really experience this building as if it's a 75-foot tall building. You experience it as a single floor, a second floor, or a three-level building much more often than you will actually see and experience the height. Next slide, please. Another comment was, can we look at setbacks? How are we treating our neighbors, and what are we doing in regards to setbacks on the property? Next slide. So what we did is we took a look at the design and decided for the east-west facades, we can start to pull those in a little bit more, create a little bit more of a light corridor and airspace between our neighbors. Next slide. So you can see how that adjusts the floor plan. We start to create these outdoor rooms that we intend to heavily landscape and intend to create these additional space between our neighbors. Next slide. In addition, for the rear of the setback, we still have a 20-foot setback from the rear, in some cases a 60-foot setback to maximize the light and air corridor between us and our residential neighbors to the north. And if you go back one more. And if you look there on the right, that's the 5th floor. What will be done on the 5th floor is set that back further so you're really not interacting or seeing the 5th floor from Chapin Avenue or from our surrounding neighbors because we've set it back. And if you note in the renderings, you really don't see the 5th floor as much. Next slide, please. You also asked about some details on the facade. We showed this before. This is the tile we propose using, similar in a similar vein to a lot of the brick facades you see around Burlingame. This is our take on that type of facade using a stone glazed brick facade. That is an image of what that looks like in real life. If you can go to the next slide. And so this is the east elevation, which is very similar to the west elevation. We think it's a remarkable improvement from before as we've been responding to how do we create more setbacks. And then if you go to the rear, next slide. This is the rear facade, also very transparent. The idea being, as you're looking at it, you see a lot of the natural elements. You see the mass timber, you see the greenery, and it looks like anything but an office building. And that transparency will allow more light to communicate through the rear of the site as well as into the building itself. Next slide. This is where we really spent most of our time over the last few months, is addressing how do we add more public benefit or interact more with the ground floor. And so if you go to the next slide. So we always had the concept of a front porch, and that was the idea there being to interact with the public and let the public come on the private side on our site and interact with it. In taking a look at how we further that, what we did instead is we pushed that out further and really tried to lean into that concept of creating a public plaza and what I view as a pocket park, if you go to the next slide, that creates a pocket park in front of both 1430 Chapin and 1440 Chapin. The idea being when I walk around a city and I see these little pocket parks or these little areas of landscaping that you really wouldn't expect, you're attracted to that area, you want to check it out, you want to see what's going on. Much like the park here at City Hall that has this great element of nature. And then if you go to the next slide. So what we've done is we've connected the two buildings on the horizontal plane through the idea of a city of trees. Next slide. And monitoring and inviting people onto the site, onto the plazas, integrating in how that pedestrian circulation will work with vehicular traffic. Next slide. And this is what we've ended up with. So we have two plazas that are significant in their presence. I think mid-block on Chapin will dramatically change the way the street is used, attract more pedestrian activity that is so prevalent in downtown Burlingame, and bring it to Chapin. If you go to the next slide. So you can see here a rendering as you're sitting in front of 1430 Chapin, looking towards 1440 Chapin. You could see the integrated seating, the lush landscaping, and you can imagine yourself sitting here waiting for a meeting, meeting a colleague. And if you go to the next slide, and a similar interpretation of that at 1440 Chapin, maybe akin to the park out here in front of the rotunda. Next slide. Last Planning Commission study session, there was a comment about window coverings. We talked about roll-up shades, and I'll just touch on that briefly. So we will have roller shades that are of an opacity that it helps with heat gain and energy efficiency, but at the same time allows enough transparency to see through the building, to see the natural elements of the building and not block views from inside. Next slide. There were also questions about the shadow study. We had a shadow study before. We expanded that, if you can go to the next slide. And so we looked at how the shadows cast across our neighbors in the different months of the year, as well as the different times of the year. In the summer, spring, and fall months, there's minimal shadows being cast on our neighbors, with the exception of the PM times. It's the winter months where you have more significant shadows being cast on the neighbors to the north, northwest, and west of the site. Next slide. And you can see here how that transitions from different times of year as well as times of day. Next slide. And no significant shadow being cast on 1440 Chapin with the way the sun travels. And next slide. There also was a question in regards to how would it compare to a 4-story building versus a 5-story building. So we looked at the shadow study and determined that, yes, there are more shadows cast in a 5-story building. Next slide. But not materially so from a 4-story building. Next slide. Next slide. And so if you can go to the last slide. In closing, I'd like to leave on this rendering. It's a project we think will be one of the preeminent mixed-use buildings in the Peninsula downtowns, if not the preeminent mixed-use building. The use of the mass timber, the input we're getting from you as a commission and from the community has dramatically improved the project. We think we've added a lot of public benefit for a private project. I'm excited to get your feedback and continue to bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Well, yeah, it looked to me, if I was reading my plans correctly, that in the back, you had actually changed, you had added onto the back,
Mhm.
that was cut more away. Is that, am I misunderstanding, or it has gotten more bulky towards them?
So if you can go to back a few slides and we'll go to there's a floor plan. It has been adjusted. There's some areas that have pulled out and pulled in, but that 20-foot setback line remains, which remains unchanged. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right there. Next slide. Yeah. So where before we had some greenery there, we just pushed it out slightly, but it's still effectively the step back remains at the 20 feet. I think it might have been squared off prior. And then we're adding decks on the right side, and there were more decks previously. So it's a combination of still keeping the 20-foot setback line, and then on the inner portion that comes back closer to 60 feet.
And the other question is, I think this is a very large structure, and I wonder about, it's an office building,
Mhm.
so light pollution on your neighbors. I mean, I walked all over back there a couple of times, and I'm just very curious how you plan to handle that.
So Title 24, I think, dictates exterior lighting. So come nighttime, we have to keep in mind for light pollution. So it will be reduced as far as exterior lighting. We won't have uplighting and the likes of that. I don't know that there is regulations on interior lighting, but it is an office building, right? And so traditionally, office hours are such where the building shuts down, in the evenings as you get to 6 or 7 p.m. So I don't know that we will have interior we can look at operating restrictions on operations of lighting, but it's really geared towards more exterior lighting.
I was mainly talking about the ones on the interior.
The interior.
I mean, that's a pretty big and light, very significant cube, not very far from the folks behind you?
Yeah, I think the separation between the two buildings might be 40 to 60 feet, depending on where you are. And I think it's really just about how the office will operate, and typically they're not operating as late as I think most of us would think.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
So is the glass going to be floor to floor, one piece,
Uh,
as shown in the renderings?
Say again, please.
The glass going from floor to floor,
Mm.
essentially? You're going to do that in one big 15-foot tall piece?
It'll be that, or it'll be curtain wall is most likely in the larger pieces, or where we can get away with it, it'll be storefront glass.
So so tip doing tempered or safety glass, bottom 30 inches, which is why you tend to see
A transom,
in
right?
across the bottom on most.
Sure.
So I think it's important that we are capturing those rhythms early, not permitting.
Understood.
So I think that the glass is big. I was the one asking about the shades, and I appreciate that you were including them,
Mm.
but I'm concerned about their operation, whether they'll be timer or photovoltaic, whether or not they're going to be at random heights across 50 windows. And then really as you approach the corner section too, that detail gets harder.
Right.
So I'm trying to think, I'm thinking forward on the details that I would expect if I had to do it.
Mhm.
And I know you're early on in the design phase part of it, but they're the pieces that will start to maybe impact rhythms that we're otherwise looking for on the outside. So with the heavy timber design,
Mm.
how do you move conduits, HVAC, and other utility items that may traditionally fall within an ACT ceiling?
Sure.
Or height within the bar joist where you have ways to go? I don't know, can you cut big holes?
Yeah, so if you go to the floor plan, sorry, I don't know the slide number. We might be able to see it. So essentially, we plan for a mechanical chase. And so the way the beams are structured, yeah, go back to that one. If you look on the outer edges of the building, you can see the column spacing is a little tighter.
Uh-huh.
And so that's tight enough that we can cantilever that gap, and we don't need a beam there. And so we're running ductwork and MEP vertically, and then we're coming out with branches.
Okay.
So, and it's an important point because I think with mass timber, there aren't a lot of people who have done it, which is why I've gone to Lever, who are one of the resident experts in the nation. And when you see their finished product, it's a dramatic difference. And so if you saw that rendering from before, you could see the ductwork is very clean, everything's really planned. And that sort of like you're saying with the windows and some of these details, that really does have to be thought about today, right? And so
I was just thinking about, because your floor plans are really clean too, so they don't show a lot of
Right.
bases going up to the roof. And I'm sitting there going, well, all the stuff's on the roof. How are you going to get it down to floor number
Right.
2 or floor number 1? And then how do you get it under the beam or make it look nice? I love an open ceiling, but
correct.
you spend more money making it look nice.
So it's definitely planned for and thought for. There are vertical chases that go up vertically through the building, and then the chases that go along the beams and the planes and the column lines, because the beauty of this material is we want to leave it exposed, right? And so
Yeah.
we don't want to go through all this effort and height.
Cover it. I totally agree.
Mm.
That's why I'm bringing it up. On the roof for the rooftop units,
Mhm.
create a design, or are you waiting for tenants to have to deal with that?
I mean, I think we will look at, some of these are details we haven't completely thought through, but yes, we will look to have a screen. There is a bit of a butterfly
Mhm.
effect, and so that will also
That'll help,
hide some of that.
but you're gonna have dunnage and everything up there too.
Correct.
And since you have such a flat roof, I'm a little concerned about the access onto the roof
Yeah.
too, because you're not being covered by parapets or anything else.
Right. I think it's all stuff we would consider. We would mechanically screen it. I think there was an earlier version of the project where we had a very tall elevator chase that we don't need quite the height. The question was like, how much further could we go above the 75 feet? Because we're not actually taking an elevator to that level. that is a bit reduced. But yeah, we would plan to screen mechanical equipment.
I think it's important that we capture it early on as a design element because we are pushing the limit on heights,
Sure.
asking to raise heights, which are then going to set precedents throughout.
Right.
So I want to make sure that then we're also setting that precedent on how to properly address rooftop.
And I think it's also in how we've tried to be as respectful as we can with the height, creating setbacks that are further than what's in the zoning code so that it is less visible from different areas of the surrounding neighborhood.
I like the location in the middle of the butterfly,
Mm.
but it is still going to stick up.
Sure.
So, sorry, and I'm trying to make sure I get them all in. Do you need to incorporate solar, and does that go on this roof or not?
Yeah, that would still be a component of the project as part of Title 24. And so we
Okay.
be looking
I,
at grid solar.
so my concern about that then is the edge treatment on the roof going around. If you're going to flatten no parapet and you're trying to make it look skinny,
Right.
you're going to then have stuff up there that is less attractive.
Yeah, all things that we'll have to design in for the details.
Last question. Can you tell me why the condo application?
Good question. So the condo application is primarily there for JP Morgan. JP Morgan intends to own the retail condo as opposed to be a tenant, a leasing tenant. And so that's why we've created a condominium primarily for the retail condo. At the same time, because we were creating a condo, the plan was to condo each level as well. But the intent is to hold the office building as under one single ownership and lease it as you would traditional office. So the the condominium is primarily for JP Morgan to own their space.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I just had some questions kind of about more kind of public use and to the building. So is the parking only for tenants of the building and those coming to visit the amenity spaces, or will there be after hours parking?
Currently is designed for tenants, but it doesn't mean we couldn't work on some arrangement that allows public parking after hours.
Okay. I didn't see whether there was like a gate or something that comes down on the,
Likely there would be a security gate.
mhm. And then in your, on the main floor, I don't know if you kind of have a hypothetical floor plan there. There's that kitchenette that's noted, and, shower rooms, and, bike storage and such. Is that intended to show kind of demonstrate a partial plan for a potential tenant? Or is that bike room
Got it.
all levels to use?
If you can go to that ground floor plan, we should have it. And we're talking about the house at Chapin. Thank you. Next slide. It's a little hard to see, but that is essentially a built-out planned amenity that we would finish and complete. So that is it will change, it will evolve, right? But that's the concept. We would provide that as a building amenity. So if we're saying there's bike storage, if we're saying there's showers and lockers, a golf sim, a bar, we intend to build that.
For each level? Or this is?
So this would be what I call the house, this hybrid social club and elevated
Okay.
workspace that would be an amenity for all the tenants in the building. Because what you're seeing today with tenancies is the old model was a tenant would take the 30,000 square foot floor plate, take the entire plate, and they could plan some of these amenities in the.
Mhm.
What you're finding is there's less demand for that large of a footprint. And so you're getting tenants that could use 5,000 or 6,000 or 10,000. But if we don't plan for that kind of, to your point, Commissioner, of planning for the details, if we don't plan for that today, what you end up doing is taking a 30,000 square foot plate that's designed for a single tenant, chopping it up. It becomes very inefficient, and tenants don't like to lease space. They're not here for this project. What we're doing is trying to provide amenities that might be more typical for 100,000 or 200,000 square foot user and give that flexibility for these smaller tenants where we feel the demand is for today's office market.
That's interesting. Okay. Got it. Thank you. Let's see. Looking for it. Okay, I think those were my questions there. On the right, you said on the east side, there was a little bit of carving, a little bit of mass change.
Mhm.
adding a little bit more?
Yeah, we did it on the east and the west side of the facades. We added essentially these outdoor balconies and what I view as sort of outdoor rooms. And we mirrored that on both sides. And what it actually does, and we weren't thinking about it, but if you go and you look at the facade detail, it kind of mirrors what we have on each facade. At each facade, kind of in the center of the elevation, you have this landscape lush cutout. And then now that we've added these components, it's mirrored on all different elevations.
Got it, thank you.
Any other question?
Well, okay, it's just was a observation slash question. You know, the plants and such, and the walls, the planted walls, they look very nice in your illustration.
Mhm.
They are illustrations.
Sure.
So we've had a couple of projects in Burlingame where they have done these planted walls
Mhm.
and they're dead,
Mm.
been replaced by just the wall.
Yeah.
And so I guess, how do you,
How do we plan for that?
yeah,
Yeah, so I did a building in downtown San Mateo, a conversion of an old movie theater into what is very interesting office space. And it's adapted for use, so you have very interesting architecture. This is a new construction, which is why I'm kind of leaning towards this mass timber, because that has its own differentiation. I bring that building up is because we have about a 35-foot tall living wall there on the front facade, finished in 2018. The thing still looks beautiful today. And it's because have irrigation running through, drip irrigation running through the living wall. And the living wall itself is a design, right? Like how the plants, what the plants are chosen, the colors, et cetera, all has a very specific design. So we take care of that, we trim it, we replace plants, and we keep it properly irrigated. So that would be my answer and what we would look to do here. So we would use essentially a living wall system to get those vertical walls. You have to study, are we getting enough light down there? Because yeah, that's the last thing we want, is for this thing to look as if it's not upkept or not as we intend.
okay, thank you.
Back on that drainage and that, you know, because you got a lot of
Sure.
to figure out ways to get that down. That makes it harder.
Yeah, I mean, we have our drainage plans, but a lot of it ends up being treated, and we have the living roof on the roof, and then we're running it back towards the back of the site, treating it out and pumping it forward because we didn't quite have enough grade to run it naturally. So the idea is run it to the rear of the site and then pump it out.
Great. Do we have any members of the public
Thank you.
in person who wish to speak on this item? Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. I see we have 2 speaker requests. The first is from Pam Waddington.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Pam Waddington, 20-year homeowner of Redwood Crest, 1435. Here today just to express my concerns. I spoke in March to you as well about, and ask a couple questions regarding the proposed 5 stories, 75-foot, but actually now it's feeling like 90-foot with the things on the roof. The building will both impact residents personally and financially from the perspectives of privacy, property value, peace and tranquility, darkness in our homes despite the sun and shade studies. I kind of find it hard to believe that a 5-story building isn't going to block some of the natural light despite all the studies. I've read through the architectural plans and presentations to the best of my ability. And I have just a few comments and questions. At the rear facade, it appears like office to the right-hand side, it's all glass, and it appears that office workers, I don't know if there's condo resident, the word condo was mentioned. I don't know if that means residents. Okay.
It's commercial.
But office workers will be looking directly into our living rooms and our bedrooms, as it looks like it's just about a 20-foot border between or what is it called, a 20-foot setback, even though there was mention of a 60-foot, I think it's in that cutout. So it's basically a 20-foot setback. So it's not great waking up to say hi to the person in your backyard, in the office. Plans also call for a concrete wall behind Redwood Crest to be demolished. And I don't see anything in the plans about the provisions for replacing it. That wall really provides privacy, at least for the first floor units, and more importantly, protection. So my question is, what are the plans for replacing it so it isn't just this throughway for the back of the building into actually the first floor units? There's a very large, third point, there's a very large acacia tree that is on our property, but I wonder with a two-story or two-level garage, how that can't negatively impact the root system because it's huge. So my question would be, who would be ultimately responsible for the care of that? And if anything happens, to just make sure it's taken care of. And then lastly, the rear facade doesn't appear to have the tiered, except for maybe that fifth floor. I see that there's glass walls and there's granny, but I didn't see any accommodations for the tiering, which might make it a little bit more palatable for the residents. So thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. The next speaker request is Marianne. There you go. Come on up.
Hello, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. I just want to know why the special permit. Why? Is it nobody else got a special permit? Have you denied special permits? Why do they get a special permit? And they're blocking, I'm also at Redwood Crest on Bellevue Avenue. So this is greatly impacting us. So the question why? Is it money? Is it, you know, what's the reasoning behind it? What's the benefit for Burlingame? Burlingame is not New York City, and we are a small town. It's a quaint town. It's a beautiful town. People come here. They love to shop and eat because it's quaint and small, and they can walk it. And when we have, though beautiful, when we're going this high, we're losing that quaintness. We're losing that small town charm that has kept Burlingame beautiful this whole time. So that's something to consider. Also, just the construction, demolishing and building and demolishing and building. We're looking at Ox Mountain having not much more capacity past 2034. And we're gonna demolish this Chase building and put this up. And it's just more carbon footprint that we just don't need. I understand that this Chase building is a little old, but there's got to be a better solution than 5 stories. And with all due respect, you keep saying back of the site. Back of the site is my front yard. So I don't really appreciate that. And you're giving me 4 hours of sunlight. Should I thank you? You know, I get 4 hours of sunlight depending on how high this building goes. I get from 10 to 2. So you want this building to be part of the community, and you want people to walk it and enjoy it, but you're alienating your neighbors who are going to be there 24/7, not just people visiting. So I just think that you're kind of missing the big picture when you go higher. And the big picture is what has kept Burlingame for, you know, for hundreds of years. And I just think that this is the first slippery slope to losing Burlingame's charm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing you can come up and speak, yes.
My question is, I'm at 1435 also in Bellevue. The question is, how does that affect us for the duration of the work? Dust, noise, when do they start, when do they stop? How do they plan to cover us from dealing with the dust and the noise?
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public? Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Fleming. Also at 1435 Bellevue. So hi, the neighbor in the rear. And I agree. I was surprised to see such a large building. I understand it's a commercial property space, but residential runs along that whole back side, and it doesn't feel like the residential piece of it is being considered. So it feels like that building, if it was on a different street in Burlingame, would be amazing and fabulous, but it doesn't seem to account for the neighbors around it right now. That is my backyard. That's my patio. The building that you guys are moving into for the city hall, I can see directly into the office space. That building already sits way too close back. I don't know the distance on the building that you're moving into, but just because that is there, it doesn't mean that we should continue that precedent. I can see directly into the office. I can watch the guy on his computer, and he can see me while I'm sitting on my couch. So it's, and if my bedroom's open, that Chase Bank is right in my bedroom. I don't really need that much transparency um, in my backyard or in my space, in my home. So I appreciate you guys considering other options, continuing to evaluate what's best for the whole community, not just that one piece of land space, and thinking about the bigger picture. Because I also asked a question about the proposal for City Hall, because we're literally sandwiched in between these two proposals about what's the vision for Burlingame overall, and what are we thinking about the bigger, like, values that we're trying to uphold when we're thinking about building and how we're thinking about renovating in the future of Burlingame. Because it feels like we're looking at these projects as individuals, which I understand, but I don't feel like it's being thought of as cohesive about the impact to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public like to speak on this item? Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments?
Well, should I go first?
You're welcome to.
I remain very concerned about what is now looking like 90 or so, potentially up at the Bank of America lot there, which is an enormous parcel. Across the street at Molly's, that could become, there's a lot of parking lots in there. I'm just looking at a lot of bulk on that street, and I guess that is zoned office, but I mean, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to guess that this could be housing of some sort, some mix at some point, not too far away, or perhaps already, I don't know. And then they can become a certain percentage of housing, and then those can become even higher. So I am sensitive to the comments about starting a scale over there that is out of proportion to the rest of the downtown. And it is an amendment, so they're asking because they want this particular thing, whether this actually ends up happening or not, the amendment is still going to happen. So even if many projects have been planned and approved, and many are offices, and they haven't happened. And so therefore we changed the zoning, not only for this, but for everything else in that area that is coming in the future. And I am concerned about it because when we worked on the downtown specific plan, everything was considered organic as working together. Like you did one thing in one part because you knew this would be even it out in another part, and it was pieces that worked together as a whole and not as individually in a vacuum. And I feel like these folks are asking for this area, which it's not a great street as it is now. I'm not going to say it's a wonderful street. Needs a lot of help, but it is it is an element of the downtown specific plan, a very large area and a component, and the component is potentially going to be very out of proportion to our cute, I still consider it cute, our nice downtown. And where we have very tall buildings, and we have a prime example that was not built, I don't believe it was built with this kind of timber, the one at the post office, the old post office, that has a huge huge setbacks all around it. And I think the height is not as imposing because of the setting of that particular project. So to say, yes, we have here and there some tall buildings, it's not quite the same. There are some beautiful buildings that are not going to be in this height range, that were not built with the timber, and they're being filled now or filled. So, and they're new. So I would much prefer this to be in the range that was designed for this, me personally, that for which it was designed at the time the specific area plan was developed. I don't think it's fair to the people behind this project. I think it is a slippery slope, personally. I'm not enjoying this direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Pfaff. Other comments?
Want to go? Great. So thank you for addressing my many questions, and I hope that will help guide you into the types of things that I want to see for an action item, to help us be clear and to help us communicate with our neighbors and the public, items that we can do to help improve. Listening to the public comments, I am a little concerned about the wall at the back. It says proposed wall, but maybe we need a little bit more clarity on what that means, the height versus what's being removed. Because if we just say, oh, put a 6-foot fence back there, well, I don't think that's going to be appropriate given what's there now and what we're trying to manage as far as visual throughness from the neighbors. I also, looking at that kind of back area, it might be worth looking landscape-wise a little bit more carefully at, your bushes on the deck, pretty, but they're not really doing that visual, it's not giving a whole lot of visual break from the tenant versus the residents in the back. And again, that kind of comes back to me, the shades. I think the shading, not necessarily that it needs to be opaque like these shades here, but if we didn't have these shades here, we'd be polluting out into the neighborhood something terrible tonight. So I think that there needs to be some sensitivity on how we can make that a little bit less easily transparent and a little bit more screened for both groups. Utilities. Oh, and I think some more, there's, on the banding around the front, there's like an 18-inch at the bottom, just above the fin on each floor. That could use some clarity. Just needs a note so I know what I'm looking at next time so that we kind of better understand that detail. And that's the kind of detail I'm kind of looking for as far as how the rhythms of those windows work. And that will give it a bit more human scale versus transparent floor to ceiling. That's good for me. Thank you.
I wanted to just thank the applicant for a really nice design, a very thoughtful design, a unique form of framing and use of materials. I like that this is a project taken and thoughtfully considered. It's very poetic. I like a lot of it. I am concerned about the height. I read the applicant's, considerations for the reasoning for the height, economies of scale for the construction of this nature. but I'm, moved now by these public comments and feel like we have paid a lot of attention to the front, and I love the massing that's happening at the front and the terracing, um, specifically on the front elevation and a little bit now on the sides. But I feel like the back has now been, was kind of the fourth elevation that was developed in. There's a lot of glazing back there. I don't know if there's a solution in either carrying out more of the kind of carving out the terracing like we do like you have at the front, at the back as well, or if there is less glazing on the backside, a little bit more solid material, less kind of just clear glass looking back and forth fishbowl for the tenants as well as for the residents to feel that so close by. I don't know what to say about how to address this height. I am also worried about once all the mechanical equipment that's beyond the 75-foot amendment or special permit application. How high this really is going to be when it's all said and done. I don't know how to comment about the amendment to our downtown specific plan, but I kind of think about how we design a unique single family structure adjacent to neighbors, and how we don't design homes that are just straight blocks, straight chunks of structure next to a neighbor, but there's kind of like a little bit of a tiering and kind of a mountainscape kind of shape as we address neighbors from neighbor to neighbor. And in some regards, I feel in the same way with this downtown specific plan, that the downtown is a whole area, and should this higher limit be limited to a central part of the downtown, and then there's the outer banks have a tiered effect, something that drops down to a lower limit to just for, the adjacencies to residences nearby. I don't know what to say about how we can go about doing that, but I kind of see it in the same application. So I think I don't have a lot to contribute in terms of the design. I just think it is very beautiful. I like what's being developed here, but I am concerned about the height and its where it's sitting on this street and in relationship to the neighborhoods beyond the amount of glazing.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the height thing, I've been giving a lot of thought about that too. But we actually have quite a few lots, and we've dealt with this a bunch of times where, okay, it was a 3-story multifamily next to us, and now we're being kind of forced into housing saying, well, you can go up to 85 feet. And I'm sorry, the guy next door doesn't have any choice. And we don't either, because state mandates it. I mean, the fact that this is an office, the only reason we can have this conversation. If it were housing, there would be no conversation. Anywhere in the city, when we're doing new building, we're going to be faced with more height and neighbors that haven't already built up. This just happens to be the first building to kind of challenge the height and go bigger. But if you look in that neighborhood, there's some apartment buildings on Bellevue that are taller. The AT&T building on Burlingame Avenue is taller. So there's quite a few. This isn't the first one to break this height. And so it's part of how our city is growing. I do feel like this is a good area for financial institutions to grow, because we have so many on that area now, that this is the right place for this. But I do agree, it's challenging in how do we make that interface a little softer between our residential neighbors versus our commercial neighbors.
Yeah, that's why I think that the solution seems to be, if it's moving in the direction of a 5-story building, that the backside could receive some softening, maybe some less glazing, more, that's what I mean by more solid materials, less glazing for that opacity.
Thank you for letting me.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners on the backside. So the positives, though, I appreciate the presentation. I think we're going to really love the mass timber design. I've been visiting college campuses with my kids over the summer. It tends to be the thing that's happening now on college campuses is mass timber student centers, and they really are very nice. Much different and better, I think, than steel and concrete in terms of just variety for the city. I think the facade and the step backs and the design on Chapin are fantastic. I think it's the backside and the impact it has on the residences that are really concerning me. The height, I think it's slightly different because it is backed up to residents, but it's not a showstopper for me if we can deal with that back facade that's closest to the neighbors. I do agree with Commissioner Schmid that this building looks amazing in these renderings, but when tenants move in and screw up your vision by, taping stuff to the windows and putting furniture in the backs of printer cables on it, and if you're driving on 101 and Marsh Road down in Menlo Park, there's a really nice modern building, and that's exactly what happened. All the shades were kind of wrinkled and at different heights, and it just made what this rendering looks clean and simple into a little bit of a mess. So I do agree that some type of automation or some type of control of shades to keep them aligned and neat and preserve this architecture would be required. In terms of light pollution, a building like this will be a lantern. So I do think thought has to be given to light pollution from interior light. Certainly, I've worked in office buildings where it's all about motion detection and the lights go off after 3 minutes because people do work till 10 o'clock at night now. And if all the lights are on all night with the cleaners, and it will be a lantern. So somehow, I think that has to be addressed. On the backside, I would give up the balconies on the west elevation that are facing the
El Camino?
no, yeah, El Camino, right. Because they're just facing the other building, really. And maybe use that to provide a little bit more setback on the back of the property and provide for some relief to the rear neighbors. But to Commissioner Say's point, I would also consider a completely different facade on the backside. Maybe move the move the core to the back end, or somehow just reduce the amount of glass, or somehow create more privacy with either plantings or frosted windows, or there's many, I think, options you have to do that, but it is, I think, too much from a privacy, light pollution, and just imposing on the neighbors that happen to be residential. I think the carbon footprint is a really good comment, but again, I do think you'll like the mass timber. It is actually an environmentally sound solution. And in terms of construction, I think you'll like that this is kind of like an erector set, right? It's all prefabricated. It just stacks up. So it's not a lot of on-site messy work, as if this were a poured concrete building where they were building formwork, and it's a whole different construction. Yeah. So there's a lot of maybe potential benefits. In terms of the community benefit, I think one of the community benefits is that streetscape connecting the two buildings and adding more trees and kind of making an indoor-outdoor space. Because I do think Chapin is underutilized. It's a wide, avenue, but there isn't really that type of amenity today. So, I think you have a lot of comments to consider as you come back for action. It's moving in the right direction, but that rear facade and its proximity to the residences, I think you're hearing, is a significant concern.
Can I ask one more thing, or ask or comment? The greenery. So I looked in the back, because 20 feet is really not much in that circumstance. Unfortunately, it looks like their underground garage looks like it creates an area which is impenetrable for planting. I mean, impervious, misunderstanding. I was thinking, well, you could plant some big trees back there, which is better than just looking at light, I think. But I don't know if you can, because I think the garage is there, right? It's a public hearing, sorry about that.
Well, yeah, I'll have to reopen the public hearing if you're, do you want an answer to that?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, I'll reopen the public hearing. Can the applicant please come forward and provide an answer?
So I appreciate all the comments, and I'll take it to heart as far as trying to improve the privacy and the transparency of that rear facade. To address your question, as currently designed, yes, the subterranean garage does come to part of that portion of the site, but doesn't go all the way to the end. So there is some limited area for planting. As I mentioned, we also are looking at how we are solving the parking solution, which may not involve a subterranean garage. And then if we do that, we might have more room for planting.
Well, that would,
That's sort of what I'm hearing, is that it'd be great to maybe screen this with more greenery, as opposed to, like, my thought was the transparency allows light to pass both ways, right? But I hear the concerns of privacy. So we'll take a look and see where we can do that. Can we use greenery to answer that and solve that problem?
also it was, and I'm not sure the topography exactly around there, but it looks like beyond the fence, it drops way down.
Mhm.
Then you folks or the others have a whole bunch of parking spots, right? I don't know what happens, why it drops down, that maybe there's a creek going.
They're at slightly different grades.
Exactly, but maybe there's something, because there is that nice tree back, there's a nice substantial tree. Maybe there's something you could figure out with pulling your parking back or something, but enough that a large tree growing, a substantial tree that will make a difference, is not going to ruin your building at some point
Sure.
where you'd have to rip it out anyway.
No, I mean, it very much, our intent is to, the acacia that you mentioned, is to leave that tree. It's obviously, it's also not on our property, but
But I'm talking about new.
agreed. And it very much fits the design philosophy for what we're trying to do, right? And add landscaping and add greenery in places you don't expect. So we'll take a look at it and we'll see what we think we can do, how we can find solutions to create more privacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As you can hear, that back fence line is our pain point today. So I would say if there's something to really, you did a great job focusing on the front part of it so that, the parklet and everything is working. Kudos, happy.
Mhm.
But now we got to put that attention to that back fence line so that we can then explain this concept and make the neighbors happy.
Appreciate the comments, and that's exactly what we'll look at.
Because this is one of those things where, when we're looking at houses, we look at the windows and we're trying to make sure that everybody's happy because you only have a small amount of space.
Mm.
You have more space, but it's still kind of the same concept of you've got a residential behind you, not just another office building that's going to be vacant.
Thank you. I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Want to ask if there's any more questions?
Oh, yes. Actually, I'll reopen the public hearing based on that to see if there's any members of the public who want an opportunity to speak. Please come up. You'll have to come up for the microphone.
Forgot to add this earlier, Marianne. And I also think that asking for a condo permit is a slippery slope. It's either a commercial building or it's not.
I think that's just, condo is just the name of the ability to sell individual pieces of the building. It's a commercial building. It's not a residential.
Yeah,
building.
I just,
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
slippery slope. It's a whole different ballgame. Thank you.
And I'll close the public hearing.
And
Commissioners, oh, sorry.
Chair Haran,
Yes.
if I may, just before you formalize and make a motion, great comments about the building. I just wanted to double check and ask about the public amenities and the concept design that's been developed. It's the intent of the applicant to go and refine it, but wanted to make sure the general concept they used a design model based off the High Line where the natural materials and landscape kind of morph together with seating areas and planters. The city's been reviewing it. Not only for their purposes, but for the city hall. The applicant has agreed to build out basically City Hall's public plaza for it. So there's been a lot of coordination, but we just want to make sure the general concept and idea seems appropriate from the commission standpoint before we move to the next phase.
So I do have a question on that one. Does it, is it coming in a bit on it? Are we bringing the plaza into the street a little narrow, helping narrow it?
Yes.
Do you know about how much or?
So currently Chapin has angled parking and the plaza will remove that angled parking, go to the edge of that angled
Got it.
parking for a certain amount of spaces in front of the proposed project as well as City Hall. And so there's some dimensions on the plan. I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top, but it will be a good sized public plaza space for both spaces.
It's on sheet A071 if we have that available.
We'll see if we can pull it up. And there will be, the sidewalk will run through, it'll be a concrete sidewalk, but there will be then decorative stamped concrete made to look like wood planks in the plaza space,
Oh.
as well as planters and seating areas that blend into the design, landscaping, trees, and things of that nature.
So while she's looking, is this, just so I understand procedure. So they are asking also for this amendment in order to make this possible, right? And how are we, if I want to talk about the amendment, because I do, is this the time or do I wait until?
Are you meaning the amendment to the downtown civic plan?
Yeah, I'm talking about.
This would be the time. They are providing this community benefit, particularly in front of
Mhm.
City Hall, as it is not required for them to do that as a benefit for the additional height that they are requesting for the building.
So further on that, we'll have two items. But on what you are, what this plaza or whatever, it's public space, are we then saying that in the future, other projects that also are in this area would also be expected to do something similar? And would that be written somewhere? That's the first question. The second question is, it seems unrelated, but it's really not. I am of the opinion that if you're going to change something, make it better, use the opportunity to make it better. And they're asking just for the height. There is a change in the setback from El Camino in that area. So it's the two parcels that, I guess it's the Molly Stone parcel, and it would be the B of A parcel. During the downtown specific plan, those were reduced substantially from El Camino because the thought was people can walk by and look in the window. We don't really need that much setback because typically it's 20 all up. Now, I would like to, if we're going this direction, looking at the amendment, an amendment, then I'd like to say, it doesn't necessarily have to be at 20, but we should probably, instead of 10, it should probably be 15. Because what has happened on the other areas, and I pay a lot of attention to the trees, is that the trees are growing into, the ones that we have now in El Camino are growing into the sides of the buildings where, for example, Walgreens and Safeway, where the one was an amendment and one was, a variance, Safeway. The other was actually the downtown specific plan in particular. And what we have are trees growing into the sides of the buildings. And I think since we're starting brand new with a lot of those trees, they're going to be big trees with big canopies. I would like to add to the discussion that we can talk about the rest of the 2.5 blocks that are also going to be a problem on the east side. But because we're talking about this right now, I wanted to bring it up as an issue. And I think we need to consider pushing those back to perhaps 20 where they were, because it's a problem, at least 15, at best 15. That gives some wiggle room for these new large trees, and they're not going to have the light looking forward if and when it's highly likely the Bank of America parcel will be developed. They will not have the light that they need. And anyone who has been looking at the trees that were planted along Safeway on their property in that dark area, they're not doing well. One has died. They don't have enough light. And now we're talking about even taller buildings, whereas those were 45 high. So just want my commissioners to realize that we're on the cusp of starting something new. And rather than stay with the old, it's time to improve, I think, on what we thought we were doing well. I think that was probably a mistake in retrospect.
So I'll start with your first question,
Sure.
which was, the project is proposing these public amenities in the public right-of-way. Is now this going to be the requirement for other projects? The short answer is no.
Oh,
The development projects are required to do their frontage improvements, so their curb gutter sidewalks, street trees, whatever the frontage improvement is. Chapin Avenue specifically, and this is discussed in the staff report, has a Chapin Avenue streetscape study where the Public Works Department did look comprehensively at Chapin Avenue as a capital improvement project to come and make improvements along Chapin Avenue. Should a project come in on Chapin, part of their frontage improvements would be to install that frontage design as required. What this project is doing is not only is it doing a plaza in front of its space, which was not originally anticipated, it's also doing an adjacent neighbor's space, right? A development project is not required to do offsite improvements on other properties. So this is an extra benefit the applicant is doing. Obviously, when the Chapin Avenue study was done, City Hall was not anticipated to be
Right.
there. And the applicant has agreed as part of the community benefit to install both plazas. So that's the answer to number one.
okay. Can I do a part B?
Can I answer two first?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Well, it's still in my brain.
Yeah,
Part two, just to provide context for everybody else, the downtown specific plan has setback requirements for its different districts along El Camino. All of the residential districts, the R3, the R4 within the downtown specific plan have a 20-foot setback along El Camino. Chapin Avenue and I think Howard Avenue, their setbacks were reduced to 10 feet.
Mm.
What Commissioner Pfaff is asking is that with the Chapin Avenue downtown specific plan amendment, that we increase that back to 20 feet.
Mhm.
If the commission is so inclined, that would be an amendment when we do the DTSP amendment for this to also increase that setback requirement.
That would just affect Bank of
Two
America and
properties,
Molly, if
correct,
going anywhere.
mhm.
correct,
So it's really, it's a future Bank of America lot project.
correct.
Mhm.
So that was Commissioner Pfaff's discussion item for that.
Know what the adjacent Bellevue apartment on that corner?
It's all 20, 20 also. They're all 20. Everything is 20. It's been 20 for 80 years. And there's a reason, because those are big trees and we're getting big trees back. So, and they're
It's
actually,
an El Camino Reals.
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm thinking if we're going to do it to the Bank of America.
Yeah, no,
it should
it,
be at least done on. the
it should, honestly, it should be the whole east side there, but we can talk about that one in the next discussion because that is also an
and
amendment.
look at that and bring forward that amendment.
Looking forward.
Planning Commission want to include that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more thing on the second item you said about their front treatment? So they're envisioning perhaps this pressed concrete that looks like wood. So how do we keep a hodgepodge from happening?
That material was specifically requested by the Public Works Department since they will be the maintainers of the area in front of City Hall. They had originally proposed some type of paver treatment and the city said, no pavers,
Okay.
like some type of concrete, and that can be treated and pressed for ease of maintenance.
So that could also be done on other properties if something similar would come up.
So this would be just in the little plaza spaces. It
Right, I,
will be a concrete site.
I know, I'm just like, if something comes up, because there will be other very large projects someday,
Mhm.
if the amendment goes through. So I'm just thinking, just so that there's not a hodgepodge, I mean, that would be something that could be carried out throughout that same pressed.
As
If-
part of this effort, the Chapin Avenue feasibility study
Yeah.
updated, it's going to go back to the Parking and Safety Commission,
Okay.
and that all will be correspondingly updated, so it remains accurate and
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Would a commissioner like to make a motion?
Wow.
Pick the big ones.
Okay. I move with the feedback of looking at the rear elevation for softening and opacity and vegetation and the wall in the back to try and ease the the separation between the two properties. We talked about the shades, whether it be back, but really around the whole thing, so that we maybe have more ability to control the transparency. Trying to go back.
The,
Potential removal of the west side.
To investigate the
block.
west side terraces versus using that as an opportunity in the rear.
you also talked about the, how's it called? The stuff on the top to cover everything.
Screening the.
The
Screening.
screening.
Oh, and mechanical, mechanical screening.
Attractive.
Yep. Does that seem to catch the biggies?
I think so.
Are we
That
supposed to bring the
clear it
amendment in or not yet? Do we, no, just the building.
Oh.
We talk about the building or the amendment change?
Together.
Do we add the motion on the 20-foot setback along El Camino? Or is
Do
it
we, how do
separate?
we do that?
The two motions or one motion?
That seems separate to me.
So we'll study it and we'll bring it with the action item with that amendment and have those options for you to consider.
Okay.
Okay.
Add that motion.
So then
Yeah,
Then-
add it to add it to the motion.
the
To study it
studying the setback on the amendment
in the Chapin Avenue.
Chapin Avenue.
on Chapin Avenue and El Camino. Anything else?
Are you okay?
Do those take you
Okay.
clear? Okay.
Trees, planting area, we got that, yes.
Yeah, he covered that.
Wall, the wall.
Covered that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Schmid. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. A motion by Commissioner Schmid, a second by Commissioner Say. Any discussions on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Pfaff,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Haran.
Aye, the motion passes 4-0-0-2. This action is not appealable. Item 8B, consideration of text amendments to Title 25 and Chapter 26.32 of the Burlingame Municipal Code.
Thank you, Chair Commissioners. The next item is a study discussion of the zoning code amendments, municipal code amendments to Title 25 and Chapter 26.32 of the municipal code. Next slide. I will be splitting this presentation with Joe Sanfilippo and Brittany Zhao, who are here, who are going to do parts of this presentation. But just a general overview, a few months back, I came with a very crude discussion that we were going to do. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Next slide. We were going to do some very comprehensive zoning code updates to try and tackle several different topics. Next slide. So there are a few things that we are trying to accomplish with this zoning code update, and we've laid it out in these 4 buckets or categories to help organize the conversation around the topics. The first topic was code clarifications, which was just to clean up discrepancies, typos, references that were incorrect. The zoning code was comprehensively updated in 2021, and since use of the code since then, we found and caught some errors. Secondly, to do housing element implementation, we have a 2023 to 2031 six-cycle housing element that was adopted and certified by HCD. And there are each year designated programs the city has to implement in that housing element. We are, with this zoning code update, tackling your 2023s, 24s, and 25s all in one go. So there are quite a few programs that we will be addressing through this update. Thirdly, permit and process amendments. We were looking for opportunities that we could provide more clarity or streamline and improve permitting processes to benefit both Planning Commission staff and the public who do go through these processes regularly. And then lastly, to do transit-oriented community policy, which is a requirement of MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. It's a voluntary policy, but they've tied it to funding. So how voluntary is it when you tie it to funding? So we have been discussing that with City Council and identified policies that we are going to incorporate. Several of them do require zoning code updates, which are being incorporated in here. I'm going to pass it on to Brittany, who will go through several of the items, as well as Joe, and then I'm available as well as they are questions. Our hope is to get through the whole presentation, so bear with us, and then take questions at the end. Hopefully that will be smoother than kind of starting and stopping, so we appreciate your patience.
So we take notes as we go. Okay. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Good evening, commissioners. So I won't spend too much time on this category of amendments, as Netta already explained. But the first category we're proposing is code clarifications. As stated before, since 4 years have passed since the last comprehensive zoning code update, there have been a few errors that have been discovered, such as typographical errors, and also because there have been amendments here and there in the code, such as the 2025 ADU code update that has caused some of the code section references to be incorrect. So we wanted to correct those references, correct the typos, make sure that the language in the code is consistent, as well as make sure some regulations that weren't so clear before were much more transparent. And so as you can see on the slide, I include some examples of these code clarifications we made. And now I'm going to pass on to Joe, who will talk about housing element implementation.
Right, good evening, commissioners. So we have quite a few programs that are required as part of the housing elements. The policies and programs chapter is an important way for the city to advance fair housing goals and make it easier to develop housing affordable to households of all income levels. We must implement these programs or we risk decertification of our housing element, which makes us lose access to various types of affordable housing financing and opens this up to builder's remedy. So on the next slide, I will read the program title and number, but the full program language is in the staff report and housing element itself. So program A4, zero net loss of housing units. This will show up again in TOC policy as one of the preservation policies required. So we incorporated no net loss policies, which is basically replacing displaced units at a 1-to-1 rate. This is a pretty comprehensive code section update, so I'd pay attention to that one in the redlined section. Program A5, missing middle housing units. This is a pretty simple one. We just expanded the 2-unit residential overlay to the R2 district. Program A7, this is the first of several programs that mentions an incentive menu. So as part of making projects easier to pencil and providing more options for developers doing some types of missing middle projects, one of those including lot consolidation, we proposed a new code section with an incentive menu that allows developers to choose up to 2 incentives for eligible projects. And in this case, incentive for increase of maximum height up to 10 feet or reducing setbacks up to 10 feet. The program language mentions reducing parking requirements, but you'll see in several of these programs that we have reduced parking requirements to be in line with state law in several policy areas. So we have not chosen to add that to the incentive menu at this time. The next slide, we have program B4, commit to revise the zoning code and update to allow additional streamlining and allowances for residential development. So this one, we have amended the lot coverage standards in the R3 and R4 districts. The interior lots have been amended from 50 to 60% and corner lots from 60 to 70%. That is consistent with the Rollins Road mixed use district. And then the first of several programs that mentions this fairly simple parking requirement elimination for projects within 0.5 miles of transit. That's consistent with state law, AB 2097. The next slide, we have program C2, provide incentives for developers to include additional affordable units in new residential projects. So one of those is allow additional affordable units as a community benefit. So Brittany has a slide on this later, but we've added that as a community benefit option in the listed sections. Adopt incentives to encourage larger affordable units. So the incentives menu also includes the maximum height increases and lessen setbacks for projects incorporating or including like 2 and 3 bed affordable units. And then we have amended code section 25.45.070 to extend the affordable housing term from 55 years to in perpetuity, and amended the on-site alternative option for the residential impact fee to require that projects provide 10% of a project's units to low-income households and 5% to very low-income households. Right now, the current on-site alternative option is 10% of the project's units to moderate income households. So this should help us reach those deeper affordability levels. On the next slide, we have program D2, improve the livability of housing units for persons with disabilities. So one of those is permit supportive housing by right in multifamily and mixed use zones. We've made this more explicit. It has always been allowed per state law, but we've added supportive and transitional housing as a permitted use in tables throughout Article 2 now, so it's a bit clearer. Allow parking modifications for units occupied by supportive housing residents within 0.5 miles of transit. So this is the same parking requirement. There are no requirements within 0.5 miles of transit, including for supportive housing residents. And then add a definition for group homes and amend land use provisions to allow group homes of 7 or more persons in residential zones. So we've added that definition for group homes, and we have existing definitions and development standards for residential care facilities, which is a very similar type of residential use for 7 or more persons, and those are allowed in all residential districts without further restrictions. On the next slide, we have program D3, add affordable housing units for larger households. So this is another incentive program for larger affordable units, and the same incentives, maximum height increase or lessen setbacks, developers providing larger units. Program D5 is provide local share of support for countywide programs. I think there might be a typo on I don't know what the program language is for this one, but we have changed the distance requirements for emergency shelters from 0.5 miles to 300 feet. That's to bring us in line with state law. And we have also updated the definition of emergency shelters to include some other types of alternatives that are similar in nature. And I will turn it back to Brittany for permitting and process improvements.
Is it possible, is that related? I mean, I feel like we should do it in chapters, or is this completely different? This is completely different than what you've just talked about, right?
So this isn't done by article, it's more by topic, and those amendments are all throughout the zoning code.
So we're now going to a different topic.
Yeah.
So
I'll address questions.
after and then bring you back?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay,
just so we can give you a full picture and then talk about it.
okay.
Okay.
The next category of amendments we're going to talk about are amendments to planning permits. So the first topic, which we did talk about several months ago, is two amendments to the major design review process. One of which is the elimination of the requirement for a study session, as well as the elimination of design review consultants. So if you bear with me, we thought it would be best to show what is existing in our zoning code versus what is proposed in our zoning code for how this may affect the major design review process. So on the left, Project A, that Project A we can think of as a well-designed project. The commission has little to no comments on it. And Project B is a project that needs a little more help, that y'all have some outstanding comments that needs to be addressed. So let's say, for instance, this is a new 2-story single unit dwelling. So the first, and please note this is a simplified flow chart. And our existing zoning code, how it works is that when a project is submitted, staff reviews it, does a plan check, and then prepares it for the first planning commission hearing. It goes to a study session because that is required, whether or not the project is considered well-designed or not. If the commission feels that it is well-designed and has minimal to no changes, then it can proceed to consent agenda, where it is then approved and then can proceed to a building permit. Now, let's say it's a project that needs a little more help. It's submitted, staff reviews it, prepares it for a study session. If the planning commission feels it needs some help and has some changes to suggest, then the applicant will take those comments into consideration, work with staff, and resubmit to go to another hearing, regular action. If the commission still feels that this project just needs extra help and could benefit from outside consultation, then the commission can refer them to a design review consultant, in which case the applicant has to pay an additional fee of $2,000. Staff has to find a design review consultant that is available to take on the work. Staff works with the applicant, the design review consultant, in order to incorporate the comments made by the commission. And then when the design review consultant feels that the project is ready, they make a recommendation. Staff brings the project back to the commission for an action hearing, and then the commission may approve the project. And it is important to know that in our current code, whether or not a project is well designed, it still has to go to a minimum of 2 hearings, the first of which is a study session. Next slide, please. Now, this is what we are proposing. Now, let's say Project A, a well-designed project, it is submitted and we can bring it straight to action. If the commission feels that this project is in good shape, then the project can be approved in 1 hearing. However, if this is a project that does have some changes that the commission would like to suggest, it can still go to 2 hearings. Additionally, there is still the option to bring a project straight to study and rather than going to regular action. So for instance, this option, bringing a project to study session first, can be used for major multifamily projects or maybe projects that, just need a little more help. Next slide. Oh, yeah. So why are we proposing these changes? As stated before, we feel like this will help reward projects that we feel are well designed, that are in keeping with the architectural compatibility of the surrounding neighborhood, and thus we can help reduce both the applicant's time, the planning commission's time reviewing projects at planning commission hearings, as well as staff time preparing notices and staff reports. Additionally, this reduces fees for applicants. For instance, for a major design review project for a new single unit dwelling, the minimum fees for design review are about $6,500. If under our current thing, let's say they were referred to a design review consultant, they'd have to pay an additional fee of $2,000, and they may or may not be refunded a portion of that deposit, or may even have to pay more on top of that deposit if the consultant spends a decent amount of time consulting for that project. And so these changes would help reduce the costs imposed on applicants. Lastly, we've seen that staff has been recommendations, which I believe started taking place around spring of this year, have really helped improve the design review process. And in this year alone, only one major design review project was referred to a design review consultant. In the past, we'd say about 1 out of 4 design review projects were referred to consultants. Nowadays, speaking with our design review consultants, it's more like 1 out of 10 projects. So this trend has already been declining. Next slide, please. Now I'll go into several minor planning application types that are proposed to be amended. So master sign programs, which are applications for signs on the upper floors, currently they require a public hearing and approval from the Planning Commission. However, we're proposing to change it to staff review, so it can be reviewed on the staff level and does not have to go to a public hearing. In addition, commercial recreation, whether small scale or large scale. So commercial recreation, for instance, Pilates studios, gymnasiums, dance studios, right now they are permitted on a very varying levels, whether they are permitted by right, permitted with a CUP, a minor use permit, or not permitted at all in various zoning districts. We are proposing, since small scale is lesser in impact, to make it subject to a minor use permit in all zoning districts where already permitted. For large scale, since those are larger impact, we are proposing to have them be subject to a CUP in all zoning districts where already permitted. Lastly, exempt setbacks for accessory structures in the rear 40% of the lot. So for instance, let's say someone has a detached garage and they would like it to be located on property line. Right now, that requires a special permit, which means they have to go through a public hearing and approval from the Planning Commission. We are proposing to change that to a minor modification, meaning that would just be approved on a staff level. We are proposing these amendments to these minor planning applications because, as stated before, this would help reduce time spent by the applicant. This would reduce Planning Commission time spent reviewing these projects and reduce staff time preparing notices and staff reports. We have also found with these planning application types that typically the Planning Commission and the public have few to no comments on these. Next, I'd like to go over some proposed amendments to requirements for single unit dwellings, the first of which, non-conforming setbacks. And I will go into this into detail more later. We are proposing that existing non-conforming setbacks for houses can remain or be reconstructed in the same location and up to the same dimensions, even if substantial construction, which as a reminder, is the demolition of 50% or more of the exterior walls, or it's a new house. We're also proposing a change to plate height in the R1 and R2 zoning districts, so this affects single unit dwellings and duplexes. We are proposing to increase the maximum allowable plate height from 9 feet and 8 feet respectively for the first floor and upper floors to 9.6 and 8.6. Lastly, we are proposing changes to the parking requirements for single unit dwellings, and we're just standardizing them and requiring 2 parking spaces, one of which must be covered. Right now, parking requirements are determined by the number of bedrooms in houses. So 1 to 4 bedrooms requires 2 parking spaces, one of which must be covered, and 5 bedrooms or more requires 3 parking spaces, 2 of which must be covered. And now I'll go into detail about each of these amendments. So for the non-conforming amendment, we thought it'd be best to provide an example and walk through it. So this is a major design review house, 14 Channing Road, that was approved last year. It was originally a 1-story house with an existing non-conforming front setback of 910, and they were proposing a 2nd-story addition, and they required a variance for the 2nd-story addition. And also the required front setback is 16.1, the block average. This applicant ultimately tried to fall under the 15% demolition rule in order to not be considered substantial construction so that they would not need a variance for the first floor. However, with the proposed change to non-conforming setbacks, they would not need a variance so long as they were in the same location and same dimensions of the nonconformity. Next slide, please. So why are we proposing this change? This is because, well, as you all know, there are many homes in Burlingame that have non-conforming setbacks, and that's just the nature of when you are updating your zoning code, non-conformities are automatically created. We also have noticed that most variance requests by far are for single-unit dwelling setback. And also a reality that substantial construction, which has long been a challenge for the planning division, is that the reality is that a lot of these projects, avoiding demolishing less than 50% of the exterior walls is unrealistic. What we have found is projects, they try to just to the nail show that they are meeting that 50% threshold, but in reality, what contractors will often find are rotting walls or walls that become damaged by construction and they have no choice but to take down the wall and rebuild it. That can lead to as-built revisions, that can lead to design review amendments, and that just defeats the whole purpose of trying to avoid substantial construction. It also becomes really complicated for staff trying to calculate the 50% demolition rule, calculating the lengths of all the walls that are proposed to remain in order to determine if a project does not meet substantial construction. Now, this being said, a project still has to fall in the same location and dimensions of the nonconformity, and they still require a variance for any nonconforming setback for a new wall they want to build. So why are we proposing to increase plate height? Well, many older homes have plate heights higher than 9 feet, and by far the most common special permit request is for plate height. In fact, this year alone, we have received more than 10 special permit requests for plate height. Another reason is that, and some of you may be aware, 8 feet and 9 feet plate heights, our current requirement just doesn't really make sense with common stud lengths. With common stud lengths, there's 8 feet and 8 feet and 8 and 5/8 inches. When you add the total of the double top plate and the finished floor, which is 4 inches usually, you end up getting more, slightly more than 8 feet or 9 feet. So it ends up being about 8.1 or 9.1. So it's just very difficult to meet this 8 or 9 feet unless you did a custom stud length. Lastly, development trends show that most people prefer higher plate height. A lot of people now prefer higher ceilings in their homes. And another reason is that when you start receiving so many exceptions to a code, perhaps that suggests that this code is just too rigid, and so we wanted to take a closer look at our plate height maximums. Lastly, why are we simplifying parking requirements to 2 parking spaces, one of which must be covered for all houses? Well, one, this aligns with the trend of state laws such as AB 2097 and AB 1308, reducing parking requirements. Under these state laws, large swaths of the city are exempt from parking requirements already. Additionally, with ADUs, many garages are being converted into them and they're not required to replace the covered parking lots. Therefore, we decided to align with state law and also just standardize requirements and keep it simple. Yeah. Lastly, out of all these permitting amendments, I want to talk about community benefits. Joe has already touched on this, but we are proposing additional affordable housing units, and we are also proposing public art installations per the City Council's recommendation. And these are, as a reminder, community benefits available as options in the incentive menu for tier development in the zoning districts listed on the slide. Thank you for bearing with me, and I will turn it back over to Joe.
All right, hello again. I'll be going over the TOC policy requirements that necessitated code amendments. We reviewed these with City Council at their July 7th meeting, and these are the policies that needed code amendments. So on the next slide, we will be bringing back proposed amendments to Title 26, Chapter 26.32 for condominium conversion permits. And I do have a slide discussing that in a little bit here, but the other policies discussed for this effort are Section Policy 2, no net loss, and parking policy amendments. So on the next slide, I will go over the no net loss section. This aligns us with the new code section that I mentioned earlier, 25.33.40. We comply with our program A4, and this also brings us closer in line with some of the state requirements in SB 330. So the major provisions of this new code section are requiring a one-to-one replacement of demolished residential units during a new development project. Tenants must be given the right to return to a comparable unit in any new residential development. And then because this is a new code section, we've established application processes and eligibility criteria for the new requirements. And then on the next slide, TOC Preservation Policy 4, condo conversion restrictions. This is a pretty comprehensive update. So when you see the red line version, it's not actually going to be redlined. We're proposing to repeal and replace it in its entirety. So this is incorporating rental unit replacement requirements, requiring a tenant relocation assistance plan provided to any displaced tenants, and then clarifying the chapter's purpose and application processes. And we will still be maintaining the city's current prohibition on condo conversions for projects with 20 or fewer units. That's been a longstanding policy in Burlingame, and it also helps us comply with our housing element program E2, which is discourage large-scale condominium conversion restrictions. On the next slide, we have several bullets going over TOC parking policies. So one of those is a new code section describing or adding a definition process requirements for unbundled parking arrangements. And unbundled parking is where parking is leased under a separate contract. So the cost of parking may not be included in the price of rent. The same code section from earlier, eliminating parking requirements for projects within 0.5 miles of transit. This is kind of one that you'll see pop up in several sections of the code, but primarily in the parking section. We've made minor clarifications to the parking code for shared parking arrangements, and we've also included new standards for long-term bicycle parking facilities. And then on the next slide, we have a summary, and I think I'm turning it back to Netta. Do you want to do questions then?
Thank you for bearing with us. I know that was a lot of information. So we have those kind of 4 buckets that we're going to go through. And we're happy to go through the presentation based on those buckets, or if there are articles you have specific questions about some of those sections, we can go into them in detail. These topics like TOC, like housing element, touched a lot of different code sections. So we thought this was the easiest way to kind of organize the broad topics. I do want to be transparent. There's little wiggle room on housing element implementation and little wiggle room on TOC policy. And if there's specific questions, I can go into that in more detail, but I may say, hey, we've agreed to do this, or we have to do this, or this is state law that we have to incorporate. And so I just want to be clear. It's not because I don't think that it's valuable input, but we do have some limitations. And then to next step slide, just next steps, we plan on taking this feedback and fine tuning the zoning code update and bringing chapter 26.32 back to the Planning Commission on January 12th for action. And then that will be a recommendation to the City Council, and that will march forward to 2026. So we're available for any questions should you have them.
Great. Any questions for staff?
I have lots of questions and comments, but I think mine is divided up in all. I did it by chapter because I had the paper. So I don't know.
It's okay. Just do it.
You sure?
Go for it.
Okay. So I guess you're going to have to jump around with me because I can't. Is that okay? Well, I have a few typos, but I can tell you later.
Mhm.
That seems minimal. So under, this is Article 2. Let's see, I've got. I think this would be under, see where it starts, 25.10.045, which is special permit requirements in the R3 and R4 zoning districts. So I don't know if you're able to find that in, or maybe you know it by heart and I can ask you.
We have it pulled up.
Okay, so there's a section that I think it looks added in because it's in red. So it says, this was flexible miscellaneous benefit, substantial increase in said, oh yeah, no, that was an idea I had. So in order to get your additional, or they're offering to do affordable units or public art, I am wondering on those units, it's saying the project provides at least 15% low or 10% very low. Well, that's not very much. So you almost need 100 units, if I'm not the best, but you need 100 units, right? To get one, just to get one affordable unit, and that's considered a benefit. So I don't understand, maybe I'm not understanding how this is written. Am I getting it? Because that doesn't seem like enough to be considered to get things like reduced setbacks and, I mean, things that affect a lot of, the streetscape and such. So who came up with is that like a standard 15? Where did this come from? I guess I'm asking that.
And just on the math, 15, it would be 15 units in a 100-unit building,
Oh,
not one.
that's why I said I'm not that good at math.
Yeah.
But okay,
Yeah.
so you need your 100 to get the 15. So these are, right?
Mhm.
Large, fairly large. It's not like you can do this on,
But yeah, and
okay.
tiered community benefits.
Yeah, okay. So,
Sure. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, that was the one question. I was just wondering, did you come up with the numbers or that's a standard? What, is that standard 15?
We came up with the numbers.
Okay,
15% is a pretty standard inclusionary requirement. Once you start going past 15% and going into 20%, you have to do a comprehensive nexus study, and there are a whole bunch of other requirements. And so staying around the 15% is a good threshold. I want to clarify, this is in addition to what they're already required to do.
okay, got it.
So they're already required to do 15% based on our new code amendments. They'll have to do an additional. So it'll end up being like 30%. So that's a
Okay.
significant amount of affordable. units.
Okay, got it. Yeah, okay, thank you, that helped. And then there is a section, now that I'm talking about setbacks, because this is what caught my eye in particular. Well, I'm sorry, it's really hard for me to jump around to these because I'm still on Article 2, but there's another one.
Is there another one in Article 2 you'd
Yeah,
like
there's
to
another one
discuss?
in Article 2. So I got to the chart that is, it's a table, NBMU Development Standards. So not really sure where that is exactly, but table 25.14-4. And it talks about height. I guess it's referring to buildings, special height requirements. All of a sudden, what we talk about as it's a 35-foot building or it's a 55-foot building, it's changing that
To stories.
the stories. And so I wanted to ask, why are we doing that? Because, you could make a 2-story building that is or what we just saw one that's enormous.
Mhm.
So why are we, is that
So
required?
no, it's not. The maximum height is still the maximum height.
Uh-huh.
What's occurring is the same concept that we're talking about with plate heights. Plate heights are changing now where somebody is wanting a taller, maybe a taller second story because they've got podium parking. Or, for example, the 1430 Chapin project we just discussed, he's doing taller plate heights.
Right.
Instead, we're requiring those step backs based on stories versus height, because you don't want to step back to happen in the middle of a building, right? You want that whole story to push back.
Got it. Okay, good. All right, that was one. And then go to yeah, so there's a section in, it's the rules of measurement, and it's Article 3. And I'm just looking at the density bonuses, 25.33 point, I guess it's now 020 under chapter 25.33. So it's B2, the application or incentive therein may be wholly or partially denied for any of the following reasons. So one of them is D, the incentive has a specific adverse effect as defined on as government code, whatever. I don't know what that government code is, but generally what I'm seeing is in a number of these, I don't know if we have to or you pick them. I'm having issues with the decrease of our setbacks because they affect not only the people in the building, they affect everybody around the building. So we have a garden community, as you know, trees and setbacks and, enjoying the differences between the residential, the regular residential and the multi-unit. They kind of all blend because there's a decent landscape requirement and there's setbacks. So I guess I'm having somewhat issue with giving that up as a benefit for them, like they get that for something else, because I think it does have a detrimental effect, particularly in light of the fact that we just spent all this time working on our tree ordinance. It, like, this was probably the last 6 years has been spent on it, last 2 years certainly intensively. And the idea was to keep plantings on site as much as possible and not have them elsewhere so that people could enjoy them, right? And that finally got done. And I feel like this, because over and over it says you get a decreased setback, decreased setback. So especially on the front, that is carving into what we just tried to fix, which is our landscape, the beefiness of our landscapes. And to me, the multi-unit shouldn't be much different than the residential. There, the people there also would like to have a beautiful environment. If you're taking away from sides of buildings, they're losing also light and space and privacy, if privacy even exists anymore. So I wouldn't have taken that as an option. I think that would be my lowest. I would think that would be one you wanted to look at if there's absolutely nothing else to look at, because that is sort of a tenet that we have here, that we have a beautiful garden city and everybody should benefit from that. So I see all over these, both in your presentation, and they're scattered throughout here where I've put my little tabs, that being an offering as something for a developer. They get, they get to have more height and they get to cut away at the setback rather than, for example, what I would like to really see is a permit reduction. I was telling someone here, we just did a tiny back deck on our house, tiny, like 9 by 9. It was $1,000 of permit. So I can't even imagine what everybody's paying for these. That doesn't affect our whole environment. I would much rather be looking at something like that where they actually get money back in their pocket or they don't have to spend it. That is a benefit to build more than, cutting away at what I consider, and I'm not directing this at you, you're standing there and I'm not mad at you. I'm just asking, why aren't we doing that? Or looking at it the opposite way, saying, since having a beautiful environment is a community benefit, how about if you add to your minimal setback, which is minimal enough, then you get your height? Looking at it in the inverse way, right, sort of additive rather than reductive. So I guess I'm just, at some point, you've got this piece of cake and we keep cutting and cutting and cutting to the point where there's just nothing left. And we're getting to bare bones, I feel, where it affects everybody, no matter what you spend on your rent, or, I mean, talk about environmental justice. It doesn't seem right to me. So that, you know what I mean? So I'd really like to see something in there that does not sacrifice our setbacks and does permit fees or something else. I made myself a whole list. And I'm not a developer, but I feel like this is getting to the bones where if we have a choice, that is an error. And it is in direct conflict to what the two attorneys worked on, and Richard Holtz for so long, and Bob Disco before him. And we're actually taking away planting opportunities by doing that. So, and privacy opportunities. So we won't have much to work with here.
Okay.
If we cut it that. So, and then, wait, I had one more thing. I'm sorry. Yes, and one,
Don't worry, we won't play the Academy Award.
you're not,
fight
yeah.
yet.
So, yeah, and there's just, Brittany, you went over the non-conforming items. I'm just wondering on that. And also there is a section here about illegal, or not, yeah, I guess that's non-conforming, where something's been built and, yeah, you don't have to, you pretty much destroy it, but you don't have to, you can still use that same old line. I don't understand that.
Can
Why
you
don't we?
give the section number that you're looking at? That would
Yeah,
help us.
sorry about that.
That's okay.
This is Article 5.
Sorry?
This is Article 5 nonconformities.
It might be Article 5, but there's another one in Article 6. Let's see, setback non-conforming. Wait a minute.
So often multiple articles refer to the same
Oh,
standard. So
okay.
why you'll see it show up. And let me just elaborate a little bit on why we came up with this exception for non-conforming setbacks. So this actually ends up being a huge complication and problem that plays out during construction on the field. As Brittany alluded to, a lot of designers, particularly who work in Burlingame a lot, and contractors try to massage the numbers and try to find ways to keep 50% of the exterior walls, which when you're constructing and actually designing a building can be pretty arbitrary, right? You're just trying to do this numbers game to not lose your nonconformity. And what they often will do is show it on the plans and then tear it down on site. And what ends up happening is we come out for final inspection, they're gone. And then we're left in a position, we're arguing with applicants, it's already gone. I can't bring it back, right? And they've done it and built the new wall in the exact same location, so they have that existing non-conforming setback. Then we go through this paper trail of then apply for a variance and then come to planning commission, and then we basically tell you it's as built, and then you're put in a difficult situation of it's already out there. And so this becomes the most common thing that people are wrestling with on the field, and we can understand. And our analysis was, this wall exists right now. To that adjacent neighbor, essentially the purpose of a setback is to minimize impacts to your neighbor, right? To look at that setback to your adjacent property owner to give enough separation. Well, this wall already exists there. They're just keeping it. It's just a new wall. So the impact or that wall has already been there and will continue to be there in its new form. We're stating it can't be expanded. You can't further exacerbate the nonconformity, meaning if you do an addition, you gotta adhere to the setback. But this was a way to try to find a solution for a common occurrence that we're seeing playing out during construction and seeing property owners, who buy a property and go, well, my wall is already there and I just want it to stay there, and often argue and fight this regulation that they view as arbitrary. So that's why we tried to very specifically carve out this exception to allow this to occur, with that understanding. So that's where this came from.
Okay. And then there was, sorry,
No, go ahead.
one more thing. Sorry? Yeah, you go right.
On that one
Yeah.
still.
Okay.
I can appreciate that up to the point that they're permitted non-conforming.
Yes, they're legally
We
not.
have quite a few that come in non-permitted shack, and then they're saying, I get to keep it.
Right.
Yes,
Like, no, you don't. Because you're only then furthering a poor decision.
absolutely. The code is written that it has to be legally non-conforming, meaning it has to have been legally established. To your point, absolutely, Commissioner Schmidt, if it was illegally constructed, they have no right to it.
About a new owner who buys the house without knowing that they have an illegal
And they
non-conforming.
can sue through the legal at their
The realtor. The disclosure.
It's a misrepresentation.
Yeah, the due diligence is on the buyer to make sure they have all the appropriate permits in place when they acquire the property, which they can do through a public records request through us, or come into our offices and view all the building permits on record, to have that available.
Or choose not to do anything and leave it alone, essentially. If it's not reconstruct or leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Let sleeping
So it
dogs
falls
lie.
apart.
Or,
Well,
or unless.
Or somebody complain.
Gets
Oh,
yeah,
demolished
exactly.
or a complaint is filed and we go out and
I mean, there were a few in the recent years where there was just junk on the site and they were trying to reuse it. No, that's a bad.
Playing devil's advocate, trying to think of all.
Yeah.
all the options.
Yeah.
And so did we. Unfortunately, this is a common played out scenario that has been really problematic.
There are a couple more, but I want to let my colleagues speak because I have to find the parts, otherwise it's just.
Sure, and I offer to you, Commissioner Pfaff, and to all the commissioners, if there are more detailed questions you'd like to sit down with us and dig through, we are happy to do that too, before the action item. So please don't feel like you have to get all of it out today. We are more than happy to sit down.
Maybe I'll ask a few questions rather than comments. I noticed in the housing element, there was an expansion of the 2-unit overlay to R1 and R2.
Mhm.
Is that state law or is that our choice on how to achieve the commitments?
We agreed to do that in the housing
Okay.
element very explicitly.
Great. It was interesting. I went to a commissioner training, and one of the topics was around the bike share program. And so the question was, will that in the future be defined as transit so that everywhere in Burlingame is within a half a mile of transit? Because they didn't know the answer to it, but it could be
It is
maybe a problem, right?
a great question.
Yeah. So just something to consider. Yeah.
By the way, cars with the 3 houses near me.
Oh,
So the streamlined planning process, I understand the opportunity for the planning commission to have 2 bites at it. Even if it goes to action, we could always say continue.
Continue it.
But I guess I maybe more question around what is the process for staff to decide whether something is well-designed in the first place and can, you know what I mean? Like, there's some determination early on whether this is going to be very streamlined or, so they,
To that slide.
because I think you mentioned the study session is still an option, but it's at the discretion of staff. So it's just, how do we have visibility to that decision process?
So we're not going to decide whether it's well-designed or not.
Okay.
It's effectively what ends up playing out in the process, right? Commissioner, you're very well familiar with architects and designers who work frequently, kind of know what you're looking
Mhm.
for, and they'll come with a well-designed project to start. Not necessarily even with any of our influence. All that staff is doing is we're going to take every application and prepare it and bring it to Planning Commission with the associated approval documents. You then decide, hey, this is a well-designed project. There is no changes. You act on it that night and approve it. So project scenario A, that may come packaged, we won't package them any differently in the other two. We may in the staff report say, hey, these may be some design considerations to think about.
Okay.
But if you get it and decide it needs to be changed, you make a motion like you did tonight with all your list of changes and continue it to a future meeting.
Mhm.
What effectively this does, like subliminally, it encourages applicants to come forward with well-designed projects. And this is a similar project process to what most cities do. And what we tend to see is applicants just come with their best foot forward because they want to be kind of one and done. They want to go to one hearing and move forward. They get the benefit of going through quicker. We get the benefit of they just come right out the gate with a well-designed project.
That makes sense. And is this applicable only to residential, or is it, so these big projects like we just saw with Chapin, or the ones
Those we would bring forward with
study session
as-
would happen there? Okay, great.
Right. Most often what we see is these are the single unit dwellings, right?
Yes. Making the accessory units in the rear 40% staff decision, I think I agree with that. I guess it would be helpful for me to understand what are the zoning requirements for that. Like, one of the things that was amended was that 9.5-foot plate height would apply to that as well. So if you have a 0 lot line and a 9.5-foot plate height on a 0 lot line, maybe that's not great. So it would just be interesting if you could kind of summarize what would staff approve in the rear 40% without it having to come for a special permit?
Yeah.
Like, are there height limitations and?
And we don't get a ton of these, but truthfully, the same analysis that the Planning Commission does, I do want to note for like minor modifications, minor use permits, minor design review, neighbors are still noticed.
Mhm.
And so there's still a notice process that they get notified. And if any neighbor raises concern, they have the ability to call it for review, which comes up to Planning Commission.
Mm.
So neighbors are already aware. We would never do anything egregious, right?
Oh,
We're
no.
not looking. We see enough of this too, right? And the first person they do come complaining to is us.
Yeah.
To expand upon that, so the way a minor modification works, as Netta stated, is that once our review of the plans is completed, all neighbors within 100 feet of the property are noticed. If someone calls up the project for review within 10 days, then the project must go forward in front of the Planning Commission for your approval in a public hearing. However, if no one says anything within 10 days of being noticed, then the minor modification is automatically approved and they can proceed with the building permit. And also, just as a reminder, our current regulations for accessory structures in the rear 40% is a minimum setback of 18 inches from the rear and side property line.
Thank you. I'll yield. Others.
Okay, so the 9.5-foot plate height does not apply to the ADU because it has its own plate height regulation
Has own
Well,
none of
in a different section.
different section has different height requirements.
ADUs are actually do not have plate height maximums ever since the ADU update at the beginning of this year.
So I can put a 50-foot ADU on my property.
But they're still subject to height regulations.
Which is, can you remind us?
It depends. It can range from, I believe, 16 feet to 20 feet. It depends on, So 16 feet to start. It then can go to 18 feet if it's within a half mile of major transit. It can then go up to 20 feet if it is within a half mile of major transit and the slope of the roof, the pitch of the roof matches the pitch of the roof of the main dwelling. And that's for detached ADUs. For attached ADUs, it is subject to the height regulations of whatever zoning district it's in.
And that's
They have their own
Park.
specific set of regulations and aren't considered accessory structure. They're
Right.
accessory dwelling.
And the hillside overlay zone applies, all of that.
Oh, right. Hillside is 25 feet for attached ADUs. None of the houses in the hillside, I believe, fall within half mile of major transit. So for a detached ADU in the hillside, the maximum height is 16 feet.
So 1 story, really.
That was another point. I might as well bring it up now. I appreciate clarifying the definition of the view, the distant view in the hillside overlay zone. But I think you could even go one step further because it says you've added the words such as, where before it was very like limited to just, but such as is still then subjective because some people might say my main living area is the kitchen because we all live in the kitchen but it doesn't say, so it would be helpful if you could consider not only saying such as these three things, but specifically excluding bedrooms, kitchen.
Sure, we
whatever
can
it
add.
might be, because otherwise it's on us again, and that's not a great.
That's a great
situation.
point, Commissioner.
Uses of rooms now.
Yes,
Outroom, office.
right.
Well,
Dan-
and also you get that option where sometimes they get flipped, where the main living area is up higher or lower and not the ground level where you're sitting here going, that's
That's,
where I would expect my view window to be.
Yeah,
that's true.
ours
Yeah,
is on the upper
But
floor.
how do you do that though? I mean, I understand that people saying, I mean, some of those, they actually, you could tell that was their living space, the kitchen. So how do you, I mean, like their their open space. So how would we do that then?
Well, I think that's why it's important that we go and look at these homes.
Yeah,
See when you.
yeah, right.
Some
Yeah, okay.
main living space.
Kitchen with out of decor.
Yeah, yeah.
It needs to be more like the guys, sort of deck to deck windows on the project.
Yeah.
And just to put in, so I'll reveal my check marks. I do agree with the 9.5 and 8.5. That's been something that's been transparent for the last couple of years, because I do think for the reasons you've stated, the plate heights are growing. So for me, it'll be simpler because then I won't entertain anymore somebody coming in for 10 feet because we've listed it to 9.5 and that's it. It's 9.5. I'm in favor of that.
I actually am not in favor of 9.6 or 8, more in favor of 8.3 and 9.3 because I recognize the 9 and the 8 don't work construction wise. I get that.
Right.
But I think raising it up the full 6 inches says now cheat some more.
Well,
And-
but that's up to us on not allowing the cheating, right, at that point, or not the cheating, but the.
We went through the same thought process, Commissioner Schmidt. Why we landed on 9.6, we do have a lot of historic homes that have 9.6 plate height.
Totally agree. I had one.
So, yeah, so they're coming in with additions and we've got a legal non-conforming situation. They want an addition, they want to keep their ceiling height the same and not step down. And so we've run up against a lot of these scenarios. So we said, hey, let's do 9.6 to capture those historic homes and the construction model and kind of leave it there and not.
But part of the reason we brought those down was we were running into so many of the smaller homes on smaller properties that then have the 4-foot side setbacks. And then they're maximizing height and they look like a small building on a small property. They don't look like a home anymore. So, hey, I would entertain a more variable solution if people had more width on their setbacks.
Mhm.
If you had a wider lot and you were giving up 6 feet of setback instead of 4, then maybe going up to 9.5 or 10, I worry less. The other one I've seen lately is, the ones with the attached garages. It looks stupid to have an attached garage and then screw up the plate height. So we've been approving that without any
Sure.
hesitation. So that I get. But to just blanket go to 9.86 and 9.6, I think takes away from the fact that we've been actually trying to keep them a little bit more compact.
Yeah, I mean, in my home, we have 8-foot plate height and I wanted a taller roof, but we're in the hillside area and I didn't want to undergo all these things. So we used the volume ceiling.
Mhm.
We went up into our attic and
Yep.
got our 11-foot or whatever it is ceiling.
Good.
So, and I think that that's where people are not taking advantage
Yeah.
of
Yeah, you're right.
the
Ab-
volume
Right.
in the side of the roof profile.
Or coves.
Yeah.
You can, you
Yeah.
can have a lower plate height, but then step in and cove up and get that volume without making the outside of the house look so much taller
Mm-hmm.
and out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
Because these skinny houses that.
You can do that on the second floor, but not on the first floor. Because the floor height is what's
Right.
dictate that. You can't.
Well, yeah, it just depends on how you're doing these. I mean,
But you can't, like, the floor joist sits on the plate.
Plan and
I mean, you can do
you
it
get
isn't a
split
s-
levels, you get a lot of weird things.
Yeah. I just feel like this is an area where we do see a lot of, so the trend is clearly people are spending $5 million and they want higher ceilings. And it's still our
Yeah,
discretion,
on bigger
but it's
lots.
still our, yeah, but that's still our discretion to say the massing is wrong. You need to,
Oh.
right? Like it's,
Or-
9.6 doesn't say that every single house is going to automatically not get a pushback at 9.6, right?
Well,
It's just that's the
but
max.
Lower number having to request the permit, the special permit, doesn't mean we can't say, hey, that's a good idea. And you've got the separation to do it.
It's,
Whereas if we just give it away, we're not actually gonna get, we're gonna look worse for having to take it away.
well, we can't, unless we really,
And we did have a real bad period here where we got these, I call them monumental homes, that like monumental. They were like 12, there's a reason why we kept pushing it down. So,
Right, I understand the intent of the commission was not to do McMansions and allow tall ceiling heights. This is the first jurisdiction I've
Right.
worked in and that I actually know of that regulates plate heights.
mhm.
Most cities just regulate maximum heights, right? So we are getting very nuanced here. Staff is still recommending 9.6 because they have to pay for the special permit, they have to go and request. It feels like we are, there are already a lot of challenges for historic homes to continue to maintain them and add to them and keep their character. This was just a little gift. Now, again, up to the commission, but from our assessment, the extra 6 inches captured the most common application types that we are seeing come in for these special permits. And just my general philosophy, as we mentioned in our presentation, when we're seeing a lot of a certain regulation being asked for flexibility, that it's a clue to kind of look at it and go, is there room for wiggle room? Where is the magic line? And sometimes it's, no, we shouldn't budge. And sometimes is, yeah, there is some room for flexibility. So we tried to capture any instance where we were seeing a lot of these requests and bring forward a reasonable solution. But again, up to you all to decide what that means.
But but the other piece of that too is a lot of these homes, if they've got a downslope from the front porch to the street, they're now 4 and 5 feet before you get to floor plate. And then you add a high ground level, plate on that, it becomes a little monster.
Mhm.
Yeah, those downslopes occur most.
it's 6 inches.
Yeah, but you're adding all that other on top of it.
The downslopes occur most in the hillside, which are capped by your hillside heights. And oftentimes they don't even get to that max height allowance. But
The other one I would put in a
you-
pitch for is the design review. I've always been a critic of sending people to design review consultants. There are a few times when they've come back and we've criticized the design that we forced them to do, which is a very awkward position to be in. So I think the onus is on the applicant to make a good design and get a new architect if their architect is not capable of doing that, but not for the city to dictate a process and an expense and who to go to. So I'm okay with eliminating.
Then there's the pressure of us having to take action.
Yeah, we can reject
I
it.
mean, that's kind of why.
And they can appeal to the city council if they want, but yeah.
Yeah, the thought process to that is you would just continue the project with further direction on what to refine. Say the applicant goes away with your direction, makes refinements, and I'm sorry to use Chapin as a guinea pig, came with a design, you looked at the refinements, you provided more direction. In most other cities, they don't do design review consultants. I've rarely seen it go past 2 or 3 before they get it revised or
I
the
think we've had one or two that would have made it.
Yeah.
I can admit that, but then that's their problem. Like, I don't think we should be forcing them to go to a very short list of architects. And then when it comes back, we say, oh, we don't like that design. It's like,
I
we
don't,
told you to go there.
I don't see it as forcing. I see it more as it's aiding the applicant to speedily, more efficiently get through our process instead of come 3 or 4 times if that's what it takes. I have a, right now that's not in, that just removed their architect, and I'm the new architect because they went through 3 years of design review process with the planning commission, finally got the plan approved, but then the builder can't build the house because the structural design can't fit the design. So it's that bad. And so if they had that process, something would have helped them early on. They would have been done, their house would have been built.
But don't we
by now.
take on liability as a city to
Yeah,
tell
we do.
them who to go to?
Yes,
And
do.
to,
Hell.
and to force them to
Yep.
pay?
Yes, we do. And this was a big part of why we came forward with removing it and why most cities don't do this. And so, as Brittany mentioned, the planning commission has only done this once this year. Staff and the attorney's office would feel far more comfortable if we removed this out of our code with the understanding that, yes, there will be a couple projects that will have to go through multiple hearings. There was often cases where I would sit down in those cases with other applicants and recommend they hire a different architect.
You do,
For-
you have done.
You're right.
I have done that, not here, but
Like
in
that.
my other jurisdictions where
That's-
they are not, gonna make it. Similarly, I think your client maybe got to a point where they're like, this architect isn't cutting it. But it does put the city in a very difficult situation, having this remaining in our code.
And it just, yeah,
Mm.
I mean, all you have to do is watch a few of our meetings and look at plans that have been approved and you'll get a sense of what is approvable in the city. So it seems like when people come,
Guess that's what I did.
yeah,
In my years,
Yeah.
I've seen, we have reviewed actually a ton of them
Yeah.
that are just absolute garbage.
yes.
And just wonder how it even got through the counter.
Well,
be
before
printed.
staff was not doing recommendations, and this
Right.
is part of the reason this year we're implementing staff recommend, that we are getting involved in helping them out, providing them examples, going through, because you sit through and hear these as well, so we can provide guidance on the back end.
I guess another reason why we've done this is we've had some instances where applicants felt like they were blindsided by the design review consultant deposit and being referred to one and having to go through these extra steps. And we've even had not too often, but instances in which they have to pay initial deposit $2,000 and then based on how many hours the consultant has invested, they then might get refunded a portion of that deposit back. We've had instances where the project has needed so much help that they have exceeded the $2,000 and the applicants were very unhappy to find out that they had to pay more on top of that.
I paid more too. Oh.
Yeah. That's,
But
Right?
we can't force,
Get what you pay for. Yeah, it's a good one.
but better knowing that
Hmm.
at counter, we're making those recommendations. You've got junk here.
right. Yeah,
Yes.
warn
Start
it.
over.
It's not gonna get,
And here's some business cards.
right.
I mean, are you allowed to, are you, I mean, you feel okay doing that? 'Cause I know exactly what he's talking about. So are you okay doing that, like being that judgmental at the counter?
We already are.
Yeah, but I mean, can they then sue you? It's like,
You weren't a voice, though.
Right,
yeah,
So at when an application is submitted, we have 30 days to provide a completeness letter. We are now incorporating design comments and suggestions so that they know, like, hey, the planning commission is most likely going to comment on these things. Look for, similarly, as you're seeing in your staff reports, we're including design recommendations of, here's some questions about design, right? We're getting more involved, and this is common in other cities. This is how those letters come. So applicants aren't blindsided as they do receive those type of comments from staff in other jurisdictions. We're all gonna work together to get it across the finish. It'll work out.
Any other
I-
comments? Find some?
I just had one more clarification.
Sure.
I think I noted the wrong page in Article 6, but it was about the interior courtyard being covered and as so long as the roof.
This is Hillside.
It is a hillside item, as long as is it the tallest ridge line of the roof is not exceeded, that would be acceptable as a non-hillside application, is that what it is?
Commissioner Say, do you have a code section we could look up right now?
Section 6, I thought it was page 15, I can't find it. I mean, Articles,
25.
I think I noted the wrong page.
I think it's 2570 if my memory serves me correctly.
It's 25.68.020, but then I can't find it for some reason in Article 6.
Yeah, I remember
I
that.
wrote the wrong thing down.
Hillside area construction permits. Can you?
Article 6.
I'm looking for it.
Okay, thanks, Catherine.
Chapter 2570,
I think that's where.
Article 6.
5, 7.
What page of Article 6?
I get a gold star if I remember that.
It's, 2570 010, oh, sorry, 020, C5.
Page
Subs-
5?
Okay, so it says filling in interior courtyard spaces that do not result in expansions to the exterior perimeter of the building or result in an increase in the overall height. So that would be an exclusion from requirement to go through the hillside area permit.
Okay, and even though there's roof added on, there could be dips and valley peaks in
Correct.
interior courtyard, so long as its highest element does not exceed the highest part of the roof of the main house.
Correct. So long as you are not expanding the overall building height, the overall height, or the building envelope.
Okay. And that's any floor, 1-story, 2-story. If it's a 2-story interior courtyard, same thing.
That's correct.
Seems like a high specific
Mm.
exception.
I know, it's probably Eichler's.
Well, if it's, okay, so if it's a second story addition, if it's open to the sky on 2 floors, that's correct. If it's a 2-story addition, it would trigger design review. So if it was a courtyard on the 2nd floor, it would be design review,
It would.
unless it was 120 square feet or less.
This is the Eichler's, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here goes. Sorry, I feel like just very disorganized because there's so many little note things. This was on, I had a comment on, comment/question on minor modifications 25.74. And there's a list of several items for which there would be no, well, I guess it's decided over the counter or whatever, or, in-house without going through design review. And it says something like, if more than 2 minor deviations are requested, the director shall refer the application. Yeah, if more than, okay. So my question is, and these are things like a maximum increase in residential lot coverage up to 41%, a decrease in the required see I have a common theme, required side and rear setback by up to 20%, a maximum 20% increase in height of a fence, maximum 10% reduction in any dimension of the aisle, driveway, parking spaces, and it kind of goes on. And my question is, what is to keep, if you say you can do 2 minor deviations, I'm not understanding what would keep someone from doing 2 every couple of years. I'll do the 2 and I can just do it. And then I'll wait a few more years and I'll try a couple more. And I'm just wondering about the cumulative, because some of this stuff, there was another section I can't find, of course, about things that, existing stuff. So like if you have that shack or I don't know what is to keep these deviations from a pile-on and kind of going under the radar that we never see. I guess that was a concern I had.
So I want to be clear, we didn't change any of this.
Okay.
The existing requirements now. So
Okay.
minor modification, that list, with the exception of adding that detached garage in the 40%, that list of stuff is the same and hasn't changed. So we're not proposing to change it. And 2 or fewer stay at a staff level, 3 or more are then at a planning commission level. And we have not changed any of that. So these are the existing.
Okay, they're existing. I don't know if they're good or not, but I just wonder.
Just because it's
Yeah.
staff level doesn't mean you wouldn't
No.
reject it. Like, this doesn't mean it's automatic.
Okay.
No, don't rubber stamp stuff.
Right.
Things are reviewed, and as we mentioned earlier, it's still notified to the neighbors. They have the ability to call it for
For 100 feet. So basically the closest.
their neighbors.
Yeah, their
right?
neighbors basically. Okay, and then,
And we're not seeing people abusing this.
okay, just want to make sure. And then I did, yeah, under these, so I did want to mention something, there was one section about helping developers afford, I guess it was affordable housing, I don't know, by doing lot consolidation. And then a benefit would be reduction in setback. And I just wanted to point out, when you do lot consolidation, you're already getting rid of 2 setbacks on 2 parcels. So that's, you know what I mean? It's already gone. So I just wanted to point out, to offer more of it somewhere, it seems like that's a double dipping issue. I don't think that we should
That's a housing element implementation.
yeah.
Already agreed to do. And lot consolidation could be challenging, and why they are, state is wanting incentives provided is that sometimes they are small lots that are undevelopable, and then to acquire and buy a bunch of properties and to consolidate them can be challenging for a property owner. So they want cities to offer an incentive for doing such things. So, and the list of incentives was listed in the housing element.
Okay.
So I understand, we agreed to do it.
Yeah, okay. And the other thing is, the city, on multiple occasions, I know, because I've been at the meetings for the last couple of years, they have wanted to encourage, I don't want to say redevelopment, but fixing up these old buildings. They've wanted to do that. There's a bunch all over that are like 50s, 60s. They could use some TLC, but not leveling them, just fixing them. So why can't that be in one of the, the things you're encouraging to do? Because I didn't see that anywhere. As a, reuse or conversion of older buildings, to make a variety of buildings available. Can't that be on your list of things we're trying to encourage, rather than consolidate lots and blah, blah, because that could be affordable housing as well, probably already is. And then, you could do things like benefiting them by reducing their fees, parking reductions, et cetera. So.
Yeah, the city can choose to do any amount or kind of incentives it desires to do. Beyond this, we just did the minimum of what we had agreed that we were going to do for housing element implementation, because we have a certain amount of time to do it and we have to put it in the zoning code. And then all of those other types of incentives like fee reductions or adaptive reuse does require more analysis of looking at what that fee is, what percentage is right. Reducing or eliminating fees, the city's basically subsidizing those. And
Right.
so we have to, that's a conversation for council. Do they want to subsidize? So those are bigger conversations that we didn't wade into right now, because we had a certain amount of time based on our zoning or our housing element to implement this. So we just did what we agreed to. All great questions and options. We just didn't go into more elective ones beyond that at this point.
Okay, so then back to my setback. Are you saying we have to go with 10-foot reduced setbacks?
So the housing element implement program had three things listed. It said height reduction, reduced setback, and or reduced parking requirements. We chose height and setbacks since we do hear a lot of complaints about parking. We picked setbacks over parking. Doesn't mean
Can't we change?
you can. Staff just picked the reduced setbacks because we get a lot of parking complaints. I do want to note that through state density bonus law, they can reduce their parking setbacks and heights just by asking for it as a concession or a waiver. So even though we're including these as incentives, they can already ask for it without us even including these as incentives. We've said 10 feet, but a developer can ask for whatever reduction they want or whatever height addition they want as a waiver or concession. So yes, we put it in here, and also note that state law allows them to ask for far more than what we are even offering.
But do we have to actually, if they can ask for it anyway, then why are we putting it in here?
Because we said we would in our housing element.
Well, then why don't we reduce it? Why don't we reduce, the 10 is huge. I mean, if you're saying 10-foot setback reduction and you take one, it doesn't, I mean, you could take any wall. 10 is, I mean, that's enormous.
Can,
Yeah.
we wanted it to be an incentive, doing a 2-foot or 5-foot is a small amount.
Not if you go a whole length of a wall. I mean,
And that's up to the planning commission. If you'd like to do it less, I am just walking the fine line of, we don't want to go back to HCD and say, this is the incentive we provided, and they say that's not much of an incentive. So totally up to the planning commission and ultimately the city council, what that setback is. We tried to find maybe, and the way it's written is 10 feet combination. So they might do like 2 feet on one side, 3 feet on one side, and 2 feet on another, right? Like they can cumulatively add it, or they could do 10 feet on one side. So if planning commission feels like it needs to be less, I just cautioned that it not be so small that it not be an incentive.
well, I would like it to be less, me personally. I think it's affecting what we just did for everybody.
Is there a way that, I think that's a great point, that it's cumulative? If it wasn't just to be used on one side, would HCD accept it? Because I think it's a little bit more palatable, it sounds like, if it's a cumulative, like if it's used on multiple sides, not as a total of 10 on one side.
Well, I'd be curious what the rest of the planning commission on this. I understand Commissioner Pfaff, you have concerns with it. Ultimately, the planning commission is going to make a recommendation to city council. There's no magic number. And I don't know what HCD is going to reject or accept. If it's anything like actually getting the housing element certified, it changes by every meeting that we have. They are not a relatively easy bunch or understanding bunch. So I don't want to tie your hands by saying that, but I just caution a little bit here because it's a specific housing element implementation.
I mean, I'm just looking at, if you just take it off the front, our typical setbacks are what? They're like 15, I don't know, usually 15, 10, 15. I mean, then you've got something right in your face, especially in the front or the side, whatever the main corner. I think it's a mistake. I think it just flies in the face of all of our stuff we just did to increase vegetation.
Understood.
Am I the only one?
Any other comments from?
Well, no,
the plan?
I don't disagree, is when we're giving away more square footage and lot coverage, we don't get much open space. And just like we don't have
Mhm.
not much space behind that office building, not that I know why I would want space back there, except for the trees.
Right. I mean, you need them sometimes. We're just cutting to the bone on this stuff. It's like, and it's not helping.
Residential.
Yeah, right.
And they will have an inclusionary requirement. So they will come in with affordable units. Under state density bonus law, they can ask for whatever. So we can make the setback whatever, we can change it to parking. I just want to caution to not, we can do that and they can come in and ask for 0.
And it's an R2 and R3, it's not an R1,
It's R3, R4, your high density residential zones.
not in R1 neighborhood.
I know, but they're in your neighborhoods now. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, that is the totality of our environment. I mean, people use them for vegetable gardens. They have their bee things. They've got their libraries, mini libraries. You want everybody to be able to have some space. I mean, I grew up in a flat before we came out here, and we had no space, but I loved every square inch of it. So you're basically saying those don't get the space we do, or they don't get the light and the air. I think it's a really bad idea.
One thing I noticed in our North Burlingame mixed use, I was just looking in our current code. For example, it's a 15-foot rear setback, but it says 20 feet if abutting R1 or R2. So we could apply it and just say, except it's keep a standard for if you're abutting R1 or R2.
And I will tell you, I've done some research down in Mountain. They have a similar thing. If you're an R4, but next to an R1, you can't go up that high. Then you have to have a much larger setback. They have some ways to mitigate.
Or the 2.
Right, versus I'm in an R4 surrounded by R4.
Yeah. And we can put that restriction if that's how you desire to do it. I feel like I sound like a broken record because I know this is going to happen and then everyone's going to be mad at me. Even in Mountain View, even here with that requirement, if they add affordable units and ask for a waiver to eliminate that, we have to give it. So we can put these guardrails up. I hate I hate that I'm always the bearer of bad news, but and I say this because we have a real project in right now who's just blowing through setbacks, blowing through height, blowing through parking, and using waivers across the board. And this is a reality across all cities. And I know it can be painful to have to see projects like that. So I just want to be very clear. We can put the standards in there and they can choose to ignore them. So would it be more palatable to the planning commission if we did a 10-foot except when they have to maintain the setbacks when abutting a single-family residential neighborhood? Or I'm sorry, R1 and R2.
Yeah, except then on El Camino, I got the same problem. That goes into the trees. That's not enough room for a tree to grow.
But it is
Oh,
cumulative though.
I'm sorry,
Relative.
I could.
But it is cumulative. So that 10, like Director Zaire was saying, is that it's a cumulative 10. So they could use 5 at the front and then nip 2 off at the side,
But if they use the 10 front,
they could use 10 just at the front, but they could use the 10 all around the perimeter of the site too. They could use it as they wish. So it could still allow. I mean, if they use it in one spot, it is going to have that impact you're worried about, but there is that option to use
Commissioner,
cumulative.
El Camino Real is a major transit corridor.
Oh, I know, but we have,
They get a lot of exceptions and concessions, and they are the majority of our high density residential is on El Camino Real. And unfortunately, a lot of them are going to use their waiver to reduce their front yard setback. I wish I could prohibit that, but unfortunately I don't see. And I understand it's a big concern and it is a very beloved corridor. And I wish there was something I could do, but unfortunately state law has really given them the ability to do that. And I don't have mechanisms to carve that back.
so what if you were able to say that, because what's going to happen with the trees also is they're not all in a line next to the road anymore. They're toggling back and forth. So you may have one that's quite close to the other edge of the sidewalk. So they're actually then going to be cutting into their root system. So, what are the guardrails on that? That's a National Register site. It's also not good for them because they might get a tree falling in their building. So I don't know, the parts aren't going together for me.
Yeah, I think this is veering into the tree ordinance versus the zoning code ordinance. There are, requirements under the tree ordinance about protection and protecting roots, and those still are standards we can put in place during construction and things like that. I understand it's your desire to protect those newly planted trees, just the way they're installed, constructed, and are going to be protected during construction. Will do as much as it can to do those things. They're, modern day installation practices are far, far better today than they were about putting root barriers and things of that nature to try and protect those trees. So.
But I think that would maybe soften this blow that you're gonna lose.
I wish
But
I,
it's the tree ordinance,
yes,
because the setback you're gonna give up because the state controls that. But the tree ordinance, the state doesn't control. So if the tree is there and it's in a registered area and saying, hey, you cannot build into this space of the tree root space,
The
tree
the
ordinance,
drip line, yeah.
then that might protect your front setback a little. That they're,
yeah, and we have the parkway and the sidewalk before we hit the property line, and that's,
But sometimes I'm saying it's the opposite way with the way that the trees are going to be reversed is what I'm saying. And in some instances, we're going to,
understood.
yeah. So the tree's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I don't have a solution.
yeah. Okay. Just wanted to point it out.
In the past,
Yeah.
did,
Mhm.
and we
Yeah.
put lots of regulations, but unfortunately, when it comes to housing,
You might want to, though, maybe given the opportunity, the ones at the counter, I mean, it might be good to tell people that is, you risk you ruining your building or creating a problem with a tree falling on it. So, I mean, that's what I would do. Yeah.
Jurisdiction for the trees.
It's Caltrans.
Caltrans,
Caltrans.
in Caltran right away.
Yeah.
So does Caltrans have that part of the CEQA document?
It is probably, it is protected by CEQA. Yeah.
They did, as part of their project redo El Camino, they did
Mm-hmm.
environmental document.
Yeah.
So that might affect the application. I mean, distance from trees, protection of the trees that are planted on.
It could, but it is not their property right. These regulations relate to the private property, and this is not private property.
Except what's under the ground.
This is,
Yeah.
I understand, it's very complex.
Mhm.
I understand.
But it's smart to be thinking about it now than like.
Well, yeah, because they're all being planted. That's why I'm thinking it's just stupid. But
In terms of process, so could I recommend that, is there a way staff could help us with this? Because we're missing two commissioners who might have a lot of comments as well, but maybe between now and the next session, we can send our comments.
Yes.
Not to all of us, don't reply all. But send it to the staff, and they can compile, because I think it's easier to.
Yeah.
This is, when we add Commissioner Lowenthal and Shores, and they'll have, so just to try to get a list in advance of the meeting, so that at the next review, we can really hone in on what the recommendations would be. And as a reminder, we're not the approvers, we're the recommenders.
Mhm.
City Council, the approvers.
But
true.
from what I am, yes, please, especially Commissioner Pfaff, you indicated some typos you found. If you do catch typos, please do. Which is why we posted the Word version and the PDF version. If it's easier for one or the other, you can add comments. If there are glaring issues, our hope was that they would come up at this meeting, that we, like huge things we were in opposition of, but it doesn't sound like there are. It may be just more minor, and we'll meet with the other two absent commissioners to see if there was any concerns. And I appreciate your understanding in that some of this stuff we cannot tinker with because we've already agreed we're going to do it, or state law prohibits us from doing it. And HCD will, I'm not sure if you're aware, every year we do an annual progress report to HCD about our housing element, and they do want detailed information about our housing production and the programs and what was amended and what wasn't. So we do have to report to them what we have done. But if there's anything glaring or huge that you want us to be aware of tonight, I hope it was mentioned. If not, please do mention.
Okay. Maybe just for the record, there's no public in the room, so I don't think we need to invite members of the public to speak on this item. Commissioners, do I have a motion? I don't know, do we even do a motion on this one? No, right? Just
No need. It was just to
Yeah.
study, to discuss.
excellent. So we'll close that item and go to agenda item number 9, staff and commission reports.
I just would want to remind you that your second meeting in December is canceled. The next planning commission meeting is scheduled for January 12th. So we'll see you next year.
Very good. Any commissioner reports?
Nope.
Great. The meeting is adjourned at 10:06.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
It was beef.